Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, I want to thank you for this day. Thank you for every day that you bless us with. And Lord, I'd like to ask your special blessings for all our graduates from the high schools and within this county. Germanna and Mary Washington, please be with them. Please guide them, protect them, and let them be in your heart, Lord, and follow in your direction. Lord, also be with all our public safety. Also be with our citizens who might be struggling or in need. Please keep them strengthened and focused, encouraged, and let them feel your love. In your name and your glory pray. Amen. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. Mr. Ross will be calling in at some point, hopefully soon. First item is the approval of your agenda. There are 2 items in the bullpen for addition to the agenda. The first is a short presentation regarding the visit of a delegation from South Korea. And the second is in addition to the consent agenda, the approval of a memorandum of understanding for the Shannon Air Museum.
I'll tell you what, let's, since we have a quorum, go ahead and get Mr. Ross's stuff over with. Mr. Ross has contacted me and has informed me that he is not going to be physically able to attend the board meeting today due to a family obligation. He's going to be, he's out of state or out of the county and wishes to participate remotely from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Can we get a motion for approval of Mr. Ross' remote participation in the meeting?
So moved.
All right. All right, we got a motion by Dr. Trampy for the approval for Mr. Ross to participate remotely. Mr. Yakubowski?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Skinner? Aye. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
And chair's aye. We also need a motion for the suspension of our bylaws, which require electronic voting, to be replaced by roll call voting while Mr. Ross participates in the meeting.
Motion to suspend the bylaws.
Motion by Mr. Marshall to suspend the bylaws. Mr. Yakubowski?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Skinner? Aye. Mr. Marshall? Aye. Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
Chair's aye. All right. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda along with the 2 in the, what is it called?
Bullpen.
Bullpen, sorry. Phew, had a brain freeze. If we can get a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the agenda plus the bullpen by Mr. Marshall. Mr. Yakubowski?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Skinner? I'm going to abstain. Okay. Mr. Skinner's abstaining. Mr. Marshall? Aye. And Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
Chair, aye.
Brings us to public presentations. Mr. Chairman, Amy, has anyone signed up for public presentations?
Yes, sir.
Guidelines for public presentations are as follows. Public presentations are an opportunity for citizens to present matters that you believe deserve the board's attention. These presentations are not part of a public hearing. Sign up at each public hearing is separate. Public presentations are one-way comments from citizens to the Board of Supervisors. This is not a forum for dialogue or debate. To make a public presentation, please sign up on the provided sign-up sheet and please print clearly. Come to the lectern when your name is called. Clearly state your name and voting district for our record. Address your comments directly to the board. State whether you're speaking on your own behalf, in which case you'll have 3 minutes to speak, or on behalf of a recognized group, in which case you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Public presentations shall not be used to address matters subject to public hearings or to make political campaign speeches, private advertisements, or personal attacks. Your written comments are always welcome. There is a light on the podium to orient you to time. Green means go, yellow means you have 30 seconds to sum up, and when the red light comes on, your microphone will be deactivated. Amy, who's our first speaker?
The first speaker is John Buckley, followed by Jeff Walshlager.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to read a letter from
a friend of ours the past 20 years. Obviously, they can't be here because they live in North Carolina, but they wanted to really come here and speak, but I told them I would read their letter on their behalf. So this is, it's actually addressed to Gail Crooks, the Spotsylvania DSS, as well as Administrator Taylor and other folks in the state. It starts off, obviously, with the Spotsylvania Department of Social Services and what we're going through with that organization. It says, please consider your stance on the Juan Antonio case. As I do, many others believe you made an error in judgment in the charges against the parents of John and Alma Buckley, and we're okay with that, as we are all guilty of the same at one time or another. We recognize and respect that your job is not easy. However, we are just asking that you give the Buckleys a second chance. They are not abusive or neglectful parents. It is not unusual to read the newspapers and magazines of children being placed back into the custody of parents who are drug addicts and or physical abusers of children, including the ones that we read a couple weeks ago. Including parents openly declare they do not want anything to do with their children, yet here is an upstanding family in your community who are specifically committed to their children's care and well-being, and they are being denied a second chance. Having known the Buckleys for years since their oldest children were toddlers and witnessed the struggles they went through when a couple of their older children experienced medical difficulties, observed their agony as their child suffered, and seen the fortitude which they worked through those problems, it is absolutely unfathomable to me that there was any abuse or neglect on their part. The dedication and tenacity with which they worked with their pediatrician and researched for answers, the willingness to spare no expense, the determination to provide their child relief and comfort through the discomfort and distress, they have proven to be loving, protective, and caring and nourishing parents in the stressful times and situations. That they questioned the medical team in the case of Juan Antonio only magnifies the depth of their concern for him. They understood that the answer was complicated, that it would be difficult or might be different from what they initially thought it could be, but they were seeking answers to a very complex health situation. Since your governor has declared June as Family Reunification Month, please do all you can do to reunite with this family. Why are they not being given a second chance? And that's all they've been asking for. The siblings as well as the parents are suffering from the absence of Juan Antonio. Respectfully, Alice Bream from Charlotte, North Carolina. With that said, this is just obviously a sample of what not only in this community is asking for, as far as a second chance for our family to be reunited with my son, as well as other people that we've known the last 30, 40 years, just asking for that. Thank you.
Jeff Walshlager, followed by Jen Walshlager.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Walshlager. I'm a resident of Stafford County. June is National Reunification Month. Our governor supports reunification and has declared June to be Family Reunification Month in Virginia. Here is the governor's proclamation dated June 1st, 2018. Whereas foster care is intended to be a temporary intervention for children who need the safety and security of an out-of-home placement, and whereas 2,660 children entered foster care in Virginia in 2017, and whereas many families receiving foster care services are faced with challenges in overcoming trauma and meeting day-to-day needs, and whereas the Virginia Children's Service Practice Model states that all children and youth deserve to be safe, children do best when raised in families, and all children and youth deserve and need a permanent family, and whereas there were 713 children and youth in foster care in Virginia who were successfully reunified with their families in 2017, and whereas for most children in foster care, reunification with their family is their best option for a permanent and loving home, and whereas all children need the care, love, security, and stability of family unity, including parents, siblings, grandparents, and other extended family members, to provide a solid foundation for personal growth, development, and maturity, and whereas reunification takes work, commitment, and investment of time and resources by parents, family members, family service specialists, foster parents, service providers, attorneys, courts, and the community, and whereas the accomplishments of families who overcome an array of challenges to reunify safely and successfully should be supported and celebrated. Now, therefore, I, Ralph S. Northam, do hereby recognize June 2018 as Family Reunification Month in our Commonwealth of Virginia, and I call this observance to the attention of all our citizens. If the Spotsylvania Department of Social Services will make even the slightest effort to live up to the clear intent of this proclamation, the Buckleys will most certainly be reunited with their son. Thank you.
Jen Walshlager, followed by Sherry Carter.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Jen Walshlager. I'm a resident of Stafford County. You all are getting to know me by now. As the governor's proclamation states, most children are best served by being reunited with their parents. And we all know that strong families produce strong citizens. There are so many reunification stories that show a proactive Department of Social Services, yet in the case of the Buckley family, we seem to see the opposite. We see a family asking, what can we do to demonstrate our fitness as parents? And on the other end, there seems to be silence. The silence and continual bureaucracy seems to say that the Buckleys are beyond rehabilitation. I find that very hard to believe when we all know of cases with drug addicts and child abusers, and they're able to be reunited, but we're going to say the Buckley family's beyond that. After 18 months of Juan being in foster care, something is just not right. I don't know if at the core of this it's a parental rights issue, but in my opinion, it seems to be that there's people in Spotsylvania that think children are a ward of the state, or that the state has more of a right over the children than their parents. I disagree with that. I think children are a gift from God entrusted to their parents to raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I believe in second chances. And it's been 18 months that Juan's been in foster care, and I think the Buckleys deserve a chance to prove that they're going to give him a fit home. They're giving their other children a fit home, and there's lots of us who know the family. These are not criminals who somehow slipped through the cracks and decided that they didn't care about their 9th child. They were following board-certified doctors' orders. We don't have to love their doctors. We don't have to love their choices, but they were doing what they believed was right and all that they could for Juan. I would just like to ask Ms. Crooks, I'm always glad to see her here listening. I know she knows my name at this point and my husband's. I would just like to know what else the Buckleys could do to demonstrate their fitness as parents. Is there something? I would love to know. I'd love to hear from you on that. If there's nothing they can do and they're beyond the scope of rehabilitation, I feel like that's quite an indictment on Spotsylvania County. Thank you.
Sherry Carter.
Hi, I'm Sherry Carter, as most of you know, Berkeley District, and some of the women in our church today went to a luncheon, and Mrs. Carter, one of our godly saints, read what I had written, and I told her I had tried not to be mean or hateful, and she said, well, you didn't succeed. So I'm just kind of off script here. I'm not going to read what I wrote, but she told me our battle's with Satan, it's not with the people. And we are God's children, and we should be showing the love of Christ to people. And so we have been emailing, we have called, we have sent letters. We've tried to find an avenue of help for the Buckley family. And I will read this. The Foster Care Plan 16.1281, which is being used against the Buckleys, aggravated circumstances, consists felony assault resulting in bodily wounding, resulting in serious bodily injury, or felony sexual assault if the victim is against a small child. And I don't think there's anybody on that board or anybody that knows the Buckleys think that they caused anything like this to happen in Juan Antonio's life. He became a very sick child after he was born, but that was not the fault of the parents. And this month, as we've already stated, is the Virginia Department of Social Services Reunification Month. And we are here again to ask you to reconsider your decision to have an advisory board to appoint to oversee and advise the DSS on their affairs, and to speak out, if you would, for the reunification of Juan Antonio in this month of June, and to help get some unsupervised visitation rights with him and his family in their home. We will continue to stand by this family, showing our support until the time in which Juan Antonio is placed back in his home. Please, if you can help, a phone call, an email, or your voice speaking out in support, we would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time.
There are no other citizens signed up to speak.
Is there anybody that did not sign up that wishes to speak at this time? Okay, come forward.
George Dufffield from the Livingston District. I was just thinking about it when I was going by, and I went to go vote. And then I said, I'm gonna go in here and see what's going on with the Buckleys again to just see where they're at, because we go to church together. And what I was thinking about on the way over through the Temple Baptist Church that we all attend, I'm the director of Reformers Unanimous there, and that's an alcohol and drug addiction program. And we meet every Friday night there. And I was thinking about some of the people and their children, and I see heroin addicts, alcoholics, and their children, and then I see them left home with the mother not there and the boyfriend home, and abuse goes on, suicide ends up happening, and I just see a lot of that stuff go on, and I'm wondering, where is protective services for these people? But yet these people here have done nothing like that, and yet they don't have their child. And it's just, I'm just amazed at what I'm seeing here. And so I just want my voice to be made known. I got a farm, I got a trucking company, and I live in Spotsylvania County here. And I'm just, man, I'm fearful for what I see. And anyway, and the other thing I wanted to say was, if there's any way that I can help, through Temple Baptist Church, through Reformers Unanimous, anybody that's struggling with alcohol or drugs, that you would contact us. I can get you some information on it. It's a free program. I do it free. There's no money to be made on it. We're just trying to help people from ruining their lives. And so I see a lot of that, and there is some suicide that goes on from some of these young girls and young guys that happens. And I'm thinking, there's nothing like that here. It seems to be really out of balance. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Dufffield from the Livingston District, and I'm also here on behalf of the Buckleys. And I would, because it is June, Family Reunification Month, I know that you all are tired of hearing this, but I believe that someone needs to be here on behalf of the baby, Juan Antonio, who does not have a say in this matter. And as the governor's documents say, that the child is best with his family. This is a child that longs for his family. I'm sure that the social services wants the best for the child, but for some reason there's something wrong here. And I beg you to make an oversight committee that would review this case, set up a panel that can look into this and find out where the breakdown is, because I'm sure that the employees of the DSS want the best for the child, but there has to be something that's broken here, because this is just a tragedy. And I ask you all to please consider that you would take your influence to influence whoever you can in your circles and get that child back with his family. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that did not sign up that wishes to speak at this time? We'll close public presentations. Mr. Taylor, we're at the approval of the agenda, I believe.
And that brings us to the
Consent agenda.
approval of your consent agenda. May I have the floor computer, please? This evening's consent agenda is as follows. There we go. How did I do that? Excuse me. Let's see. Now, would you back that up, Mark? Item 1 on your consent agenda, board members, is the approval of minutes for the May 8th and 12th, 2018 board meetings. Item 2 is action to accept and appropriate Bridges Grant Program Award for July 1, 2018 to June 30, 2019. Total grant of $177,100 for the Social Services Bridges Program, for which there is no local match. Item 3 is action to accept and appropriate the FY 2018 Heavy Technical Rescue Scholarship Award. This is a $1,695 scholarship that covers part of the cost of staff attending the Structural Collapse Technical School. This is for the training of FREM personnel. Item 4 is the approval of a contract to Finley Asphalt and Sealing, Inc. to provide Holbert Building pavement rehabilitation in the rear. This will be done later this summer. Low bid was $284,547.71. Item 5 is the approval of a contract modification number 2 to renew a contract with Johnson, Miramoran, and Thompson, Inc. to provide professional engineering design services for transportation projects. This is a second renewal of 4 single-year elements in this contract. Item 6 is the approval of a contract renewal to Revere Gas Incorporated. This is for delivered propane gas. This is the final renewal of a 4-year contract, and price detail is in your executive summary. Item 7 is the approval of a purchase order to Donovan Asphalt LLC. This is for paving at the Chancellor Landfill. Low bid of $174,605. Item 8 is approval of a task order to O'Brien and Gear Engineers for the Thornburg Wastewater Treatment Plant expansion and upgrade final design at a cost of $847,786. Item 9 is a budget adjustment and appropriation for 2018 Office of Attorney General Virginia Rules Summer Camp Grant Award. It's a $5,000 grant from federal asset forfeiture funds. There is no local match. The sheriff's office will be providing in-kind services for the Virginia Rules Summer Camp. Item 10 is budget adjustment and appropriation for additional E-rate technology revenues and expenditures. E-rate is a program that funds technology in our schools, and they have received additional funding beyond what they had budgeted in the amount of $258,367 under that program. Item 11 is an adjustment to the prioritization on the unpaved roads list. This is adjusting the priority of Dovey Road and shifting it in the list relative to a different road in Livingston District, so it's a net zero for the other districts. And then finally, there was the added item, which is the approval of the Shannon Air Museum MOU. And that is your consent agenda.
All right. Does anybody have any of these that they wish to remove? Mr. Skinner?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull the MOU for the Shannon Airport, please, so I can abstain.
Anybody else? Can we get a motion to approve?
Move to
minus 13?
approve the rest of the agenda, consent agenda.
Got a motion to approve by Dr. Trampy, all but 13. Mr. Yakubowski?
Aye.
Almost did it again, I'm sorry. Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Skinner?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
The chair's aye. All right, we have 13 that,
Motion to approve 13 of the consent agenda.
all right, motion to approve by Mr. Marshall. Number 13, the approval of the Shannon Airport, or Shannon Museum MOU.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so I read through it. Why are we doing an MOU? It doesn't really say anything. What's the purpose?
Well, first of all, the budget item that was approved, $50,000 in the FY18 budget for Shannon Air Museum was contingent upon the development of an MOU, and the question was, what is the commitment of the Air Museum to provide public access to the collection and to maintain it, and also to provide some benefit to Spotsylvania County in consideration of our support. The MOU provides that tours free of charge will be provided to Spotsylvania County students showing their student ID and to Spotsylvania County school groups, including both students and chaperones accompanying the groups when they come to visit the Air Museum.
So I thought he withdrew his request 6 months ago or so. What happened with that for the funding?
There was an oral communication. In fact, there was an oral posting of a communication, I believe it was on social media, and I was sent a copy of it indirectly, indicating a disinterest at that time in the funding or in pursuing the MOU for that matter. I sent back a request to the Shannon Air Museum principal, Mr. Curtis, asking that he please confirm that disinterest in writing. I never received any such confirmation, and so the matter has remained open ever since. The item was approved by the board in the FY18 budget, and so the money is at rest in the budget, contingent upon completion of this MOU and then request for the funding.
So one last question. Was there no stipulation when those aircraft were given back to Shannon that they'd be given public access?
There was no stipulation for free access to anyone, and admission is customarily and ordinarily charged by the Air Museum for visitors. The Air Museum is interested, Mr. Curtis has said publicly at the opening of the collection at the airport, he's very interested in promoting interest in sport aviation, particularly among youth, and so the free tours.
So without the 50,000, he won't provide free access to students?
Right. Correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I do have one question. Is that just for this year, or is that for outgoing years also?
Well, that is for, given that we're approaching this MOU at this point in time near the end of FY18, suggested a term, and it was assented to by Mr. Curtis, that this obligation lasts through fiscal year 19. So this would be for the upcoming fiscal year ending June 30 of 2019.
Okay.
So is this a recurring request?
This is not a recurring funding or a recurring, imagine it could be renewed in the future or amended, extended in the future if the board should see fit, but there is no funding in the FY19 budget for the Shannon Air Museum. So this is acting upon the approval in the FY18 budget and securing the benefit for FY19. I imagine in the FY20 process, there might be or might not be, as the board sees fit, discussion of any future arrangement.
All right. Can we get a motion to approve number 13?
Was made by Mr. Marshall,
Made the
wasn't
motion,
that?
but
Yeah.
I do not see a time limit on this, on the tours.
If you,
Now
if you look on the second page, Mr. Marshall, under number 3, it says from the date of the MOU through June 30th, 2019, shall provide admission to tours at no cost.
Okay,
So if you look at number 3.
I got you.
Any other comment? All right. Mr. Yakubowski?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
No.
Mr. Skinner? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
And the chair's aye. Got board reports. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We are at board reports. I would like to assure Mr. McLaughlin I do have an answer this evening under my report later to his question asked on May 22nd regarding social services activities in relation to the Buckley matter. So that will be forthcoming. But board reports, Mr. Chairman.
All right. think I'll try to go first this time. I guess I'd first want to bring up our meeting on the 26th. I think there are a number of us are wanting to go. The board members have received their invite to go to the White House for a conference of local supervisors. I guess I'm assuming it's across the Commonwealth. And be quite honest, I don't know that we can get back in time. I think we're going to be playing Russian roulette with the traffic trying to get back. And I was just bringing up the possibility of moving our meeting from Tuesday the 26th to the Thursday the 28th, I think is, if that's the correct dates. That will ensure us time to get back. I think they have tours starting at 10:30 for us, and then the actual meeting starts at 1, and I've been told it can go 3 or 4 hours. So I just don't know. With 95 traffic, I don't know that there's a chance, especially if it goes the 4 hours, that we'll make it back in time. And I guess I'd make a request that if the board's in agreement, that we could move this back to that Thursday if it works with everybody's schedules. And I'm open to discussion. Mr. Yakubowski?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about going too. It's interesting. I've never seen this before in all the years that the White House has extended invitation to Virginia counties only. So it is interesting, intriguing. The issue with moving the board date is I know that we're supposed to meet with the school board dealing with joint service that we can do, and I know they announced at their meeting last night that they were going to be there on the 26th. So if we were to do that, if we were to move it to the 28th, I'm not sure how that would affect that meeting. So if we were to do that, I would say that we would scratch the meeting with the schools and move it to July or August at a more appropriate time that we could not feel so rushed.
Okay.
So
I don't remember us extending a visit form for the 26th. Am I mistaken?
We had, Mr. Chairman, recall that the June timeframe was expected for a report back on joint services.
That's
Dr.
right.
Baker and I have been meeting and discussing such, and we're looking forward to bringing that back on the 26th.
Okay, I do remember that now. My bad. I think we could, Mr. Marshall?
Mr. Chairman, if I can make a suggestion, can we push the meeting back an hour? Can we change the time, the start time of the meeting?
6 to 7, yep.
That would probably give us a shot at getting here.
Mr. Skinner?
Well, I'll tell you, coming from Potomac Mills, it'll take me on a Friday afternoon or any time after 11 o'clock. Takes about an hour and a half to get from Potomac Mills down to Massaponax exit 126. You never know what happens. I think Mr. Yakubowski had a good idea as far as moving our meeting with them to the next meeting we have.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. Well, I guess I'll make a motion that we move the Tuesday meeting from the 26th to the 28th Thursday.
Mr. Chair, it's fine to have an initial vote to get some, I guess, direction or sense of what the board wants to do. But as it's moving a regular meeting, we'll need to do a resolution for you. And we can get that done before the meeting's over. So we'll come back and actually have a resolution ready for you to vote, which we then advertise in the paper so that the public knows that a regular meeting has been moved to a different date.
Okay.
So you can certainly, poll the board, but we'll need to come back with a full resolution for you.
Okay.
And we will.
Thank you.
Mr. Yakubowski? One last question then for staff is, if we were to move the schools meeting, or our meeting with the schools, I should say, is there anything else on the agenda that we need to have a meeting for on Thursday? Or can we scratch the meeting altogether? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, I understand. Nikki, do you recall any placeholders on the 26th agenda other than the joint services discussion? Okay, could you retrieve that for us, please? There are a few, I can't bring back to memory what they are, and I don't have access to the list on a device, but we keep a running list in between meetings of placeholders for upcoming activities.
Okay.
Nick, you can certainly get us that list. I think there may be a couple of things that might want to be heard or discussed, and I can ask Dr. Baker while we're here for a moment what the feasibility of the 28th would be for the school board, if that would be helpful.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and take the vote, and then we'll discuss the, Mr. Skinner.
I was going to say, if we just wait, we can always bring it back with Nikki, because you're voting to move it to the 28th. And we're saying that it's possible that we just cancel the monthly meeting, or that meeting, on it, which would be the work session at 6 o'clock.
12 days to the next meeting.
12 days.
So,
All right, we'll hold off then for now.
yeah, we'll bring it back for discussion. You
Okay. Well, then I'll go to, I guess, I wanted to give a big shout out, the continuation of my board report. I'll go ahead and give a big shout out to Mr. Marshall. If nobody knows by now, it's the Spotsylvania County varsity baseball team won the state championship in Salem last Friday, and in doing so, they were not able to walk during their graduation. And Mr. Marshall, again, my hat's off to you. He made the trip, the 3-hour trip or so, with their diplomas, and actually they did a ceremony on the field for them prior to their game, which they won. So special shout out to him. Also wanted to thank the sheriff's office. I got 3 of the 5 graduations, and the little bit I saw that going on, they did an outstanding job with the traffic and the control of everybody. And I also wanted to commend the Sheriff's Office again, and Spotsylvania Volunteer Fire Department and FREM for their escort of the baseball team back into the county and to the Spotsylvania County High School. That was an impressive sight to see, and be quite honest, I was at 208 in Salem and Smith Station Road, and just happened to call Mr. Marshall just checking to see if he was back in the county, and he said they were just a few minutes out, and so I made the mad dash up to Spotsylvania High School and was able to at least view the festivities as they arrived, and it was a great turnout. And Mr. Marshall, congratulations on that. That was a very professional attribute. I know you knew a lot of those kids, and that was just something very special. I commend you for that. So, and again, with the sheriff's office and volunteer fire department and FREM for that escort, that was the icing on the cake. I tell you, it was impressive to see. If nobody out in the gallery there got to see it, it was impressive. So, I'll move on. Mr. Yakubowski.
Thank you. Just one thing. I've been a little hard on the CBRC, and in my discussions with current members and former members, one of the things that keeps coming up with them is just what a monumental task that they truly have. With people coming and going off the board, it being a volunteer group, it's difficult to actually take the entire budget as we hand it to them and say, find some efficiencies, find some waste, find somewhere that you can, or that you can propose to us that we can save some taxpayer dollars. So it got me to thinking back to the origination of the CBRC and one of the ideas that had come up at the beginning of it. And I'm going to propose this to bring it back in a couple of weeks so that other board members, if you want to add to it or change it, or if you have a better idea, of really trying to focus the CBRC on finding efficiencies. And my idea is this, especially since I believe that you need to lead by action. I would propose that we task the CBRC with taking a look at county departments, starting with a department. I would propose finance simply because they know the finances of the county, and they would probably be the easiest one to start with. And basically break down the department and look at what the state and federal mandates are for the department. I know planning has some, finance has some, and that would then become the baseline for that department. Everything above and beyond that then is up for explanation of why we do it. Is it the most efficient way that we do it? And then we take that information and also compare ourselves to our peer counties and see, you know, for example, do we have 20 people in the finance department and Stafford has 5, or vice versa? And we get a better handle on each piece of the budget as opposed to trying to get a handle on the entire nearly $500 million, or actually over $500 million budget that we have, where a lot of that money is not under our control but is passed through. So if we can take each of our departments, look at them individually, see what we're doing right, see what we're doing wrong, and find the efficiencies that way, I think that that might be an easier way to go about it, and it might be a more efficient way for the CBRC to actually do their job. So that's my proposal. Any feedback, if you guys come up with anything, please just let me know. I've already spoken with the county administrator about this idea, and I would ask for it to be brought back in 2 weeks so that we can direct the CBRC to a certain task.
Thank you.
Well, at our next meeting, yes, sir. Thank you. Whenever that might be.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Real quick one. In the last couple of meetings, we had brought up the discussion about potentially hiring an independent auditor. Based on that, at the next meeting, Mr. Taylor, could you bring back some recommendations along at the same time as we're talking about CBRC and the auditor? They kind of work hand in hand. So if you could bring us back some information about costs and, you know, potentially scope of effort, that would be beneficial. Okay, thanks.
All right. Mr. Skinner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one I'd like to, excuse me, I'd like us to look at our bylaws on special meetings. It seems to me that when we call a special meeting, it's supposed to be for that subject only. And the last public meeting, we had information didn't pertain whatsoever to why we were there that night. And so what I would like to have is that the bylaw state that when a special meeting is called, only that type of material or that information pertaining to the issue that we have can only be allowed. And secondly, I do not see a need for public hearing, public comments at that time. I really don't, because anything like, it would lead up. I mean, they've got two meetings a month that they can bring up issues of that nature. And I think it was inappropriate last time to speak other than what we are there for. And the bylaws didn't allow it or did allow it, it wasn't there at all. So I would ask that the county attorney look at putting in where special meetings can, and the information presented at that meeting will only be about the special issue that we called it for. And that there be no public hearing at that time either, public comments, I should say. And I'd make, I guess, without objection. If there's objection, please. If not, I'll make a motion to have that accomplished.
I guess my first initial thoughts would be just, I think we need probably Carl to be involved a little bit and make sure we're okay with that.
Okay, let's talk.
I can certainly provide you all some legal advice as to what you can and can't do with respect to a special meeting. I didn't have any issues at the last meeting. Legally under Virginia Code, if you all are present, you know, you all are able to talk about what you want to talk about, but you can limit yourselves if you would like to under the bylaw. So I'll provide you some information and brief you on that, and you all can decide what you want to do after that.
Is that okay, Mr. Skinner?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
When do you want that next meeting?
Is that okay for the next meeting? Yeah, thank you very much.
We'll have a next one.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, if we have a next meeting. Well, no, let's leave it at the next meeting. I don't know what date that's going to be.
All right, Mr. Marshall.
Just real quick, I'd like to congratulate the boys baseball team, Spotsylvania varsity. They won a state championship. That's the third one that we've had here in Spotsylvania County in history. Those young men worked hard to get it. I know some of them very personally, and was proud of them. It was very nice. Thank you for the kind remarks, and I'd like to thank Dr. Hester and from Spotsylvania High School. That's their principal, and Dr. Baker for allowing me that opportunity to go down there to Salem. It was an honor to be there for that, and a privilege. I thank him for that.
Dr. Trampy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Crook, since you're here, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have an estimate of how many more staff members you'll need to handle the caseload from the expansion of Medicaid?
Sure.
That's a good question.
Actually, now that we've been advised of the amount of additional state funding that we'll receive in FY19, which will be $511,000 with no local match, it just has to be utilized for items that are directly related to the Medicaid expansion project. So we're going to be taking the opportunity to sort of make sure we review all the our structure as we're currently structured, and maybe review our best practices and make sure that we request those resources be put to the most appropriate sign, whether that be staffing, whether that be some type of technology. But I am looking to come back to the board, hopefully at the July meeting, to appropriate those monies to the FY19 budget, and along with that, we'll have a plan that will include additional staffing.
Okay, thank you, Gail. During the budget process, we I understand the board didn't want to spend a lot of money on a temporary solution as far as space for the social services department. But with the need for more staff, this is not something we can wait 3 years while a new building gets built. So I know staff already put forward plans under current buildings that we own. I think this board needs to take that up rather quickly. We can't wait 3 years while a new building gets built. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I guess, just one more quick comment from me, if you don't mind. I forgot to mention you mentioned their name, Dr. Hester, who is the principal of Spotsylvania High School, and Dr. Baker, the superintendent of the schools. They did show up for the return of the ball players, and that was impressive. Out of their suits from the graduation way earlier that day, and at I forget what time it was. Mr. Marshall, can you remember when they rolled up?
Probably 6:30.
Yeah, they were at the school greeting the kids, the ball players. That was impressive to see. And I just by chance happened to see Dr. I basically turned around and we were face to face, and it took me a second to recognize him out of the suit and tie. So that was impressive to see our school staff spending basically the entire day at that school and waiting and greeting our kids. That was good to see. Okay, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Chairman, we have some feedback. First of all, from the schools of the feedback, they indicate, Dr. Baker indicates that upon consultation with their chair, that the meeting would need to hold on the 26th or move to August due to board schedules and vacation schedules of school board members.
Okay.
So, and as far as a necessity of a second meeting in June for this board, we have a contract approval with Superion LLC for a new public safety system that has a significant incentive, for economic incentive attached to it for us if the contract's approved before the end of the fiscal year. So we need to do that before the end of June. We could not get it finalized to be before you this evening, but it is one of the placeholders. There are just a few others, but the Superion contract is a key one for need for some board action before the end of June. So that is the feedback.
All right. Well, I guess I'd still make a motion to move the meeting to the 28th, and then we can just reschedule. Maybe that would give you and Dr. Baker a little breathing room for a few more discussions on the joint services that we could possibly do together. So, then we can, I guess you have a few more items from tonight's discussion you can add on there if you wish.
Right.
Maybe by chance, maybe we can make it a short meeting that night. But anyway, I'll go ahead and do the call. Motion by myself to move the meeting from the 26th to the 28th, same time. Mr. Yakubowski?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
No.
Mr. Skinner?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall? Aye. Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
And chair's aye.
Mr. Chair, like I said, we'll draft up, the resolution's being drafted up right now, so we'll bring that back to you for a vote, so we can have that approved and advertised.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize to the community if there's any inconvenience in that date change. Like I say, this was a special invitation we received. We've never received one like this before, that I'm aware in my 3 years. I'm sure Mr. Yakubowski's been on here a lot longer than I have, and he's never seen one. So it may be an opportunity for us to express some of our needs and concerns for what we get from the federal government. Mr. Skinner?
Yeah, I just want to remind the board members, I called up there to see if wives were welcome to come, and they are.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Mr. Marshall?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it has been done in the past. Could we ask to have a resolution drawn up to recognize the baseball team for winning the state championship?
Yeah.
Maybe invite their coach out to our next meeting?
That'd be good. Mr. Taylor, can we do that?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
I don't know, maybe. Think we could invite the team?
It's fine with me.
I'd love to do that for the Spotsylvania County High School.
We want to
I'm a
do
little
that
biased, sorry.
for the 28th of June or for July meeting?
If we can get them in June, that'd be great. I think the sooner the better.
They should be back.
All right.
I'll tell you what, I'll let you and Mr. Marshall coordinate that a little bit. If it works with their schedules better for the next one, we can just move it off.
We'll work on inviting the team, yes, sir.
All right. I think it's a presentation, or at least something for you on the strategic plan, Mr. Taylor.
Oh, yes. Cole, let's. May I have the floor computer, please? Desire is to bring forward publicly, board members, the fruit of your labors at your retreat in the formation of a new strategic plan for Spotsylvania County. And everything old is new again. This mission statement is actually from the prior strategic plan adopted approximately a dozen years ago. The board sees value of continuity in the mission to ensure the delivery of quality government services that are customer-focused, promote a safe, healthy, and prosperous community, and reflect excellence in financial stewardship. This is the one piece retained from the former strategic plan that is otherwise updated by the board. County's vision: we will set the standard for Virginia counties. Through mutual cooperation, we are committed to enhancing quality of life through innovation, collaboration, and creativity. We will exercise effective stewardship to create and sustain an educated, vibrant, dynamic community in a secure and healthy environment. We are excited about being standard setters. Values of the organization: accountability, integrity, service, and transparency. And I want to note in this connection that, at least as regards financial transparency with the open checkbook tool on our website and other steps taken by finance and information services, we do set the standard currently for transparency, particularly as regards county financial operations. Our long-term strategic goals. We'll build on the diversity and strengths of our staff, citizens, businesses, government, and quality education so that all may enjoy economic opportunity, safe neighborhoods, quality services, and plentiful green spaces in Spotsylvania County now and into the future. I've been proud to report to the board and the community in the past that when my department directors and I gather for our routine meetings, the Wednesdays following our board meetings, when we are all in the room together, we represent nearly 400 years of experience in Virginia local government. And so the particular mention of the strength of our staff was attention grabbing for me in this connection. We are working together to build a great community here. Long-term strategic goal number 1 centers around quality government. Our strength is in a well-trained and professional staff. We encourage collaborative enhancements to programs and policies through innovation and creativity, acknowledge the contribution from all participants, and insist on integrity, ethical behavior, and respect for diversity. We will allocate resources to ensure effective and efficient delivery of high-quality services, allocating our limited resources among the competing high priorities. We will ensure our county government's capacity to provide high-quality service that achieves community priorities. Gentlemen, as your county administrator, one of my primary tasks is to prepare and bring forward a recommended financial plan annually in the form of the recommended budget. I deeply appreciate the effort and the challenge that went into balancing the desire, the aspiration to provide excellence and the challenge to do so affordably and efficiently for our citizens. Number 2, as regards public safety, we will ensure continuing trust and confidence in the safety of our community by providing the flexibility for leaders to adjust to changing threats. Our public safety forces will be trained, equipped, and deployed to help citizens preserving life and property through prompt and skillful all-hazard emergency response, incident prevention, education, and community engagement. Infrastructure investment, strategic goal number 3, we will prioritize, plan, and invest in critical infrastructure that responds to past and future changes and improves our capacity to serve community needs. And there again, priorities are a key. Growth management, we will attend to and further our rural quality of life through a clear vision of the Spotsylvania of tomorrow, providing a balance between commercial and residential development that also recognizes the dynamic relationship between revenue and expenses as our community grows, and fostering an environment that honors our heritage while enhancing our future through the well-being of our people and the quality of our services. This is a wonderful statement to bring forward, particularly alongside this current year of our comprehensive plan update that the Planning Commission is embarking upon. Certainly the change in the development pattern in our community has been profound, and we look forward to bringing forward further information about that. Environmental stewardship, we will thoughtfully protect and manage Spotsylvania County's ecosystems and natural resources in both our rural and our developed areas to safeguard the quality of life of current and future generations. The board's commitment to quality of life, both now and the future, is a joy to serve. Educational opportunity. We'll foster a rich, lifelong learning environment to increase educational opportunities and workforce readiness to meet evolving market demands. Economic prosperity, we will foster a community environment that stimulates diversified job creation, capital investments, and tax revenues that support our community goals. And this is the format that pulls it all together into a single declaration of mission, vision, values, and long-term strategic goals. I want to salute the board publicly for the hard work of several hours, most of more than half a day spent on the composition of these statements, hammering out the balancing of commitments to various aspects of community life. So what's next? This quote actually came to me through Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, which is about management in the corporate world, but I think there are elements of it that apply very well to local government. Churchill said there's no worse mistake in public leadership than to hold out false hopes soon to be swept away. Mark, go back one slide. These are great hopes, gentlemen, for our whole community. And what I have done beyond pulling the pieces together into this presentation is to brief our department directors on the strategic plan that the board developed and to challenge them to link individual departmental goals and plans with the board's vision, the board's mission, values, and long-term strategic goals. Let's go back forward, Mark. So we don't want to make this mistake. And the hope that we see the board holding out in the strong statements, the good statements, the high statements in the board's strategic plan will not be a false hope, but a real hope for the future of our community. And as a staff, we're committed to making that real. Next. So the departments are challenged, what is the standard for each department to set? The vision is we will set the standard. We want to hear from our departments the standards that we will set as an organization, as a county government. What steps will lead us to set the standards? What strategies in the departments will tie to the county's strategic goals? And most importantly, for accountability to the board and to the community, what measures will inform our progress toward these goals? Our key discipline will be realistic faith. To be realistic, it's critical that we be realistic about our situation, that we confront the facts of our current reality, failures and limitations included, no matter what. If we don't face our limitations or face our failures, clearly we can't get better. But as we face our reality, we must also maintain absolute faith, unwavering faith, that the board's vision and strategic goals will be achieved if we stay the course. That is our commitment as your staff. We appreciate the board's vision, the board's long-term goals. We appreciate holding the mission of our local government, and we look forward to an exciting future. Understand that the challenges to the departments are very real, down to looking forward in the FY20 budget development process. That we should be expecting to begin to see measures and departmental goals that align with the board's long-term strategic goals so that we can take accurate and realistic account of where we are now and have measures in place to meter our progress going forward. And that is our commitment. Again, I want to thank and salute the board for the hard work on the county's strategic plan and invite your comment.
Any comments or discussion from the board? I'll just say, Mr. Taylor, thank you for your work with us. And I'll just commend each board member here that, for the input we all had into this. When you look at this document, you'd think that shouldn't take but 30 minutes, but, this is a very, very broad in what it says, and we're still not done with the strategic plan, I don't believe, but to come together, 7 different individuals, 7 different districts, and come together and work to bring this document together, I think we did a great job. And I just thank each of you for your involvement and your inputs and what we accomplished. Mr. Skinner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was thinking when you say transparency, I can't tell you how many times either down on that floor or up here, if you're not real close to the mic, the public cannot hear us. So I would like, if without objection, Mr. Taylor, can we look into a system that we don't have to have it right up here? Because a lot of us are thinking about, and they don't think that's the low priority as far as what you're saying. And I would remind the other board members that when we're speaking, I get probably 4 or 5 emails while we're having that meeting. They can't hear a thing that's going on. So, and I know there's sensitivity mics out there. If you could just sort of look at what we could get and how sensitive it is, we could see how it could change, because we're already changing to electronic votes, and now today we're not. So, could you look into that?
I would be happy to investigate it. I would like to ask, just to better understand where the boundaries might be, would anyone have a particular objection to lapel microphones or other individual? The sound system in this room, to my awareness, has been an issue of discussion from time to time since at least 1996, when I first came in this room. And I don't understand where the solution is, Mr. Skinner, but it may be to get off of a stand and put a mic on the individual person, and to enhance the system at the presentation tables and at the podium. I don't know, but we'll get staff to take a look at it.
Yeah, please do. Thank you. I appreciate it. There's a lot of people that are interested in our meetings, but if you sit back here, they can't hear it, and if you come up, they can hear it. And we're not thinking about the mic when we're giving a presentation or asking the school board a question. I think the lapel mic might be very well, because if you have there's some type of phone that you speak and people hear it in the ear and everything. So please look into that. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Taylor. Got a VDOT report.
That brings us to the VDOT report, Mr. Chairman. That's correct.
Floor is yours, sir.
All good?
Much better.
All right, start there, right? All right, so I'm sure you all have figured out by now I'm not Sean Nelson. Unfortunately, he could not be here today. He has a meeting down south, but my name is Kyle Bates. I am the Assistant Residency Engineer in the Fredericksburg Residency for maintenance, so I'll be going through y'all's board report today. I'll go ahead and start. We have the I-95, exit 126, the safety improvements at Route 1 towards South Point Parkway. Survey has been completed. We're still scheduled to start construction in 2021. Also, the Buckley district, we have Mud Tavern Road improvements. This is for the west of I-95. The public hearing was held May 23rd. The completion of projects scheduled for September of 2019. Also in the Buckley district, as a construction update, the Mud Tavern Road over I-95 and east of 95, that section, the interchange project, the beams have recently been set for that. Here you can see a picture of that actually ongoing. Very, very cool operation we had out there. But the completion of that project is also scheduled for 2019 in September. Buckley district as well. We have Route 17 at 609 Thornton Rolling. The asphalt work is currently going on now. The signal poles are set to be put up by July. In the Chancellor District, we have a rural rustic project, Spotswood Furnace Road. We are currently working on that. Our crews are out there. They're working 10-hour days, 4 days a week, trying to get the drainage work all squared away. That work started in May, and we're going to finish all the rural rustic projects. Excuse me, all the rural rustic projects we have within the county, and we're going to shoot all of them at the end of the summer. The Cortland District, the I-95 safety improvements for Route 3, that's ongoing now. In fact, I got a text message probably about 30 minutes ago. The slip lanes onto Central Park Boulevard is actually going to be open by the end of this week. So I might have beat my PR team on that one, but you should be seeing that announcement come out here pretty shortly. In the Lee Hill District, I know last time we had talked about the turn lane extension at South Point Parkway. That is complete. I took this beautiful picture out here today. So hopefully that should help the congestion of people backing up onto Route 1, make it a little easier to make that left turn onto South Point Parkway. Also in the Lee Hill District, the emergency pipe replacement at Benchmark Road over the Massaponax Creek project is now complete. WC Spratt was the contractor for that. They finished that all up on June 4th, and that is open to traffic.
I knew there was, was that earlier than they thought they would be?
It was almost dead on, within a day.
Okay, thank you.
In the Livingston District, another one of our rural rustic routes, Woolfolk Road. Again, hard surfacing for Woolfolk is going to be done at the end of the summer when we hit all of the roads that we've prepped all at once. They are moving to Holly Corner after they finish the work on Spotswood Furnace, and then Woolfolk will be the third route that we'll hit this year. And then if time allows, we'll move on to whatever else we have, Dovey, I believe it was.
Yes.
Nothing for the Salem District, no new updates. Just real quick, the 2018 paving operations, I'm sure you all have seen all that going on in the Route 1 area specifically. They are working on the pavement markings from Market Street to the city limits. That should be done between the 12th and the 16th. Spotsylvania Parkway, they need to hit the westbound from Levels to Route 1. That paving should have started today. Route 636 Mine Road, they're finishing up the section from Route 1 to Falcon. That's going to be tonight. And then the section east of Falcon is going to be milled up between the 12th and the 16th and repaved. Yes, sir.
If I could, Mr. Chair. Okay, so they just started digging it up today, or taking the thin layer off.
Correct.
Are you going to say they're going to start paving that tonight too?
No, that's just for the section west of Falcon, so between Route 1.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
They're doing that right now. Today, it was down to one lane because they were scraping it, I guess you
Right.
call it. Will they pave that tonight?
Correct.
And the other lane will be in another day?
I'll have to look into that, but I can let you know.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
right lane going east is one they're working on, and then they took it up to where you said New Falcon Drive is,
Right.
basically.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll look into it. I can let you know about
Okay,
that.
would you?
Mhm,
Thank you very
absolutely.
much.
And then the last one that they're going to be going to out there is 614 Dickerson Road. So they're going to start that on the 14th to the 16th. And that's from the section from Eddington to Tells Mill. And that is my report. Any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Mr. Skinner, go ahead.
Sorry to keep asking, but I want to understand this. On Route 1, in the very beginning, your preliminary engineering, Route 1 business, Lafayette Boulevard, turn lane exit at Harrison Road.
Mhm.
Exactly what is that, may I ask?
The turn lane exit at Harrison Road. I'm sorry, can you repeat yourself?
Yes, the second one that you said on preliminary,
Mm-hmm.
Route 1 business, Lafayette Boulevard, turn.
Correct, onto Harrison Road. So that one's not on the presentation necessarily, but we have.
It's out in front of the church you're talking about on Lafayette, extending the left turn lane back?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that's a smart scale funded project. That's not on here because we haven't really gotten to that aspect of
Okay.
the construction aspect.
And on 636 to 208 Hurd Drive intersection improvements, would you explain what involved in that?
The 636, let me pull that up here.
It's the front page, number third one on your preliminary engineering.
Yes, 636 at Hood Drive. Again, that's one that was funded through Smart Scale.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to the point, we're still in the preliminary aspects of it, and that's beginning in the summer of 2019. So we're not quite there where we have all the sketch of it. But I can provide you with the sketch and the application that was submitted by the county for Smart Scale funding.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Just thank you.
All good.
Tell Sean I'm impressed with the Route 1 turn lane on the South Point.
Will do.
He just mentioned that last meeting.
Good,
Wow.
good.
Doug, I think you're up. And the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight before you, I have what we have come across. I know we've gone over these several times in the past 6 months, are the smart scale applications. If I could have the floor computer, please. Projects are listed Route 2 and 17 widening and intersection improvements from Lansdowne Road past the Shannon Park Circle, the Harrison Road and Salem Church intersection improvements and widening, Route 1 and Lafayette Boulevard, 208, the intersection improvements, and new road connection at Germanna Point with Spotsylvania Avenue. The only one on here that might be a little bit new that you see is the Route 1, Lafayette Boulevard and Courthouse Road improvements. I'll go down each one of these directly. The Route 2 and 17 widening and intersection improvements from Lansdowne Road past the Shannon Park Circle. You'll see that circled right there is the farthest point. We're trying to go as far as we can with our Smart Scale application. The project will include 2 southbound lanes, travel lanes, a northbound lane with 65 to 75 feet of right-of-way there. The project is also going to include improvements to the existing turn lanes on Tidewater Trail, as well as adding additional right and left turn lanes and the cross streets and improving accommodations for pedestrian and bicycle facilities along that corridor. The estimation, all of these projects right now, they're still being worked on by Virginia Department of Transportation and JMT, and we have planning level estimates. The Smart Scale preliminary applications have been submitted. They were submitted last week with a preliminary planning estimate of between $18 and $23 million. The intersection improvements at Harrison Road and Salem Church Road, the project here shown, you see where there's just an off skew of the intersection. We're trying to make sure that we set up this intersection to receive additional lanes for the future widening of Harrison Road as we plan for the future. This project will add capacity by adding additional through lanes and the turn lanes at the intersection and transitioning back to the station's Salem Station Boulevard. The capacity improvements here will leave more of a free flow of traffic and increase movability, as well as set us up for future widening along this corridor towards the Route 1 and potentially the Harrison Road exit 128. The estimated costs here again are planning level cost, and the planning level cost estimates are between $9 million and $15 million, and again those are planning level costs. The newest one that you see on your application, this came from our corridor studies that the board approved in 2017. The corridor studies were completed, and they were supposed to be completed for our Smart Scale applications, and they're going to be used to help better score our applications for funding. The improvements that you see here are at the Route 1 Lafayette Boulevard and Courthouse Road intersections. The project will add a capacity by giving the extended through lanes and turn lanes, with improvements being made to the northbound and southbound, eastbound and westbound turn lanes, as well as adding an additional westbound through lane. This project was taken as well from the corridor study as the Route 1 intersection improvements and along the whole Route 1 intersection and 208 intersection corridor study. The cost estimate on this application, again, planning level cost estimate, is between $2.5 and $3.5 million for these proposed improvements here. The Germanna Point Drive connection with Spotsylvania Avenue, I know this has been discussed over the last several years. This is a project that we're hoping is going to score very well in our Smart Scale application, as we had a 5th application. You know, we only had 4 spots that we were allowed to apply for Smart Scale funding. We had 5 that we wanted to apply for, and we were able to get the exit 126 Route 1 improvements onto I-95 to be in our regional project with Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. But the Germanna Point Drive connection to Spotsylvania Avenue, as shown here, will provide the connection points between those 2 corridors from Route 17 and connect with Spotsylvania Avenue. This is down past the buildings there down at the end of Spotsylvania Avenue. The connector road will consist of 2 12-foot travel lanes and a 10-foot shared use pass with a connection, which will include approximately a 150-foot long bridge. And again, this is a planning level estimate. Those are further being defined, and we're looking at approximately $15 million $12 to $15 million for the improvements along this corridor. This will also serve as an additional flow point from traffic on Mills Drive and 17 as a relief for the Route 1 corridor. Staff recommends the approval of the attached resolution and the projects that have been brought forward to you the last several times. This was taken to the Transportation Committee and recommended for approval. Does anybody have any questions?
Any comments, questions from the board? Mr. Yakubowski?
Yeah, I have several. The corridor study that was complete with the improvements at the 4 Mile Fork intersection. You know, gentlemen, this is why I had brought up during the budget that projects that were not in the bond referendum should not have been using bond money to do. This with Smart Scale will take 5 to 7 years to even start these projects. And when the voters went to the voting booth in 2014 and authorized us to spend money on projects that were laid out before them, these were the ones that were supposed to be in the bond referendum revenue that, or not revenue, but expenditures that we get from the bonds. In my district alone, 60% of the voters that went in 2014 voted yes on the transportation bonds. But here we are supplanting projects that were supposed to be in the bond referendum with ones that were not. And now we're going to hopefully get these done, just like on Route 1, the J-Ramp version 3 that we had wanted to do on our own, but VDOT was here today, and I know that they're working on it. This is not an attack on them at all. This is simply pointing out the issue that we have, that the construction on that won't be till 2021, and that was voted on in 2016, I do believe. So that's 5 years before it even starts. And the voters said to us that we can go ahead and do it. So these are the objections that I raised. That's fine. We can go after Smart Scale. I would prefer that we go directly for using bond money on these projects. That's what the bond money is there for. That's what the voters entrusted us with. That's why they went out and voted yes. And my question then would be, if these don't score high, for example, the 4 Mile Fork one, I'm hoping that the bridge over Massaponax Creek there would be a that would connect the two would actually score pretty high. VDOT estimates that I had heard originally is that that's a $30 million project, and I've heard from private individuals who build roads that they could do it for several million. So if that's going to score high and these other ones don't score, we will find out when that we don't have them. And then when is the next round of Smart Scale if we were to take these same projects? My point behind all of this is if they don't qualify for Smart Scale, we eventually will have to pay for them if we want them done, or we're going to have to sit on them, even though that these were items in the bond referendum that the voters said 4 years ago, go ahead and start and go ahead and do.
So first, yes, they were approved under the bond referendum, and those projects would need to be moved forward by the board, and in order to issue those bonds, then we have to identify funding to pay them back. So we would need to do that. That's certainly an option, and the board has the ability to issue those bonds and prioritize those roads for completion. The Smart Scale project comes at no cost and at no local cost to the citizens. It is a Smart Scale project, and that is used to try to offset those funds because those bonds were not issued. They were approved, but those were not issued for those specific things. The J-Ramp that was approved, just to be correct, the J-Ramp is not approved, and it was never has never moved forward. There was I-95 exit 126 off-ramp improvements, 2 lanes that are going southbound on exit 126 for Route 1, and those lanes have been included to go for, were approved, and those are moving forward, but it is not the J-Ramp. The other improvement there for Route 1 was the 17 and Mills Drive, the bridge and the widening that's going over 17. As far as the Smart Scale, when we were going to be identified or be all these projects qualify, They just have to score and rank appropriately. We have done very well in scoring and ranking these projects historically, and I feel good about that. The misfortune is the amount of funds that we have to fund these projects from the Smart Scale is limited, so that might be a hindrance to making all of these projects score satisfactory with the limited funds. But the Smart Scale prioritization and ranking will be done in the fall, and hopefully we will know something by winter of when these projects are ranked and when they're scored. I don't have an identified date of when that is going to be scored or ranked, but the applications for preliminary applications have been submitted. They were due on June 1st. There was a difficulty with computer, so they extended it to June 8th. Our applications in Spotsylvania County were the first applications in the Smart Scale process, so they were well aware of our projects months before any other projects in the area.
And just to follow up, just a clarification, the improvements on South Point, they're considered the J-ramp version C is what we're
Correct.
calling.
The J-ramp is gone.
Right, the J-ramp as it originally was, but it's version C. It's just taking a longer route since it had been talked about for so long. But the it goes before, and then doesn't the CTB then have to approve it? And so then that goes into the spring of next year, or is that what happens in the winter?
We should know something. What I'm being told is they're trying to make sure that this is not, that they're working on fine-tuning this project continually. And so the funding, even the funding for these projects are in the year 23 and 25.
Right, and so my concern, and to raise it to the board, I know there's no actual local dollars that we're handing over, but these are state tax dollars that are being used, so it is taxpayer money. My concern is that with the way that the state government is going and sort of sloughing off to the localities more and more transportation responsibilities, and with their brand new bright idea of expanding Medicare in the state, funding is not unlimited, and yet our needs are, it seems, especially when it comes to transportation and trying to make up the ground. My concern, and I think it's pretty valid, is that regardless of if these do get approved, is will the money be there 4, 5, 7 years from now? We've already seen Smart Scale being scaled back from what it originally was. And I think basing all of our hopes and dreams on the state, coming through with what they said they would do is always a gamble, and one that, quite honestly, I'm kind of tired of doing. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. McLaughlin. Any other comment? All right, Mr. Yakubowski?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Skinner? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Trampley?
Aye.
And chair's aye. I imagine you're staying seated, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, Judicial Center Lane.
Yes, sir. The next item I have in front of you tonight is Judicial Center Lane. If I could have the floor computer, please. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the Judicial Center Lane, and I know that there was some confusion about exactly what was going on. Public notice has been sent out. The adjacent property owners have been notified. The adjacent property owners are Spotsylvania County. The Judicial Center Lane is going to be restricting the access as that was recommended by the Department of Justice, the courthouse safety assessment for the courthouse renovation project. It's going to be directly behind the courthouse where Judicial Center Lane is. Judicial Center Lane will remain open. There will be no office closes and will not impact any of the service or do any interruption to any county offices. And in addition, Judicial Center Lane will continue to have free movement of traffic open to the public from Dean Riding through the parking lot, through the front by the Holbert Building, and all the way to Courthouse Cafe. So the only change will be directly behind the court building. From this diagram right here, it shows to the bottom left of your screen is the Courthouse Cafe, ingress, egress, where you come in and out of that. You come down in front of the attorney's office, and in front of the courthouse there, you turn left. Of course, that comes right out to the Holbert building. Free flow movement, as you see right now, comes through all the way behind the courthouse to the top of your screen, if you can see right up here, and it connects to Dean Riding. This portion along here, shown in the next diagram, is the only portion that's going to be closed off for public access. That's going to be removing the discontinuance of VDOT maintenance of this area. So your free flow movement will only be restricted right behind the courthouse area, and it'll now look like this. So free movement in both directions from Courthouse Cafe all the way to the courthouse and back out to the Holbert building. And then you have that free flow movement down into the parking lot, further down into Judicial Center, from Judicial Center Lane to Dean Ridings. And there's also at the bottom here, this also connects right back out to Dean Ridings as well. So the only portion that's being taken out of VDOT maintenance is this small portion right behind the courthouse. Staff recommends approval.
Doug, that was a security recommendation. Go back to the picture, please.
Yes.
It's a security recommendation based on a study done at the request of one of the judges in the General District Court.
I do not know which judge or if it came directly from a judge. I do not know that, but I do know that for the safety improvements and for the construction, if you'll see where the arrow I'm pointing right there, can you see that area right there? That's a parking lot. That's where the addition is going to be for the courthouse renovations. And I believe that flow of traffic is going to change. And this was recommended as a safety measure to eliminate that free flow of movement behind the courthouse.
And that's the only change?
That's the only change.
Mr. Skinner?
Hey, Doug, on that, so are they actually removing the road?
No, no.
Okay, then what's going to prevent, is there going to be a gate there on both ends?
That has not been displayed to us at this time. There's several options that they have talked about, that they're going to do bollards, or they're going to do planters, or they're going to do a gate. That has not been defined, and we don't have a plan. But in order to move forward with any of the plan and the engineering of it, we have to have this part of the system taken out.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Mr. Marshall?
Also, when we work on this plan, I'm sure you've already had to handle this, but I'm sure you've already handled this as far as when this project goes. We're going to have the proper signage to direct people for the free.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, we're in good shape.
All right. Do you need a motion from the board?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you'd like?
Please.
Okay, got a motion from Mr. Skinner to approve the discontinuance of maintenance from VDOT for Judicial Center Lane in the portion described. Mr. Yakubowski.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner. Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
And the chair's aye.
Thank you.
Brings us to Mr. Chairman to a report on adoption of a comprehensive FOIA policy and procedures for the county. I'll say while the legal staff is getting assembled to share this presentation, our FOIA coordinator, Nikki Dickinson, my staff, this is a first piece in enhancing our accountability and ensuring our transparency, ensuring that we have orderly and regular compliance with state law regarding the freedom of information.
All right, Carl, the floor is yours.
Good evening. For members of the public, people watching at home who don't know me, my name is Carl Holston. I am the county attorney. To my right is Sheila Weimer. She is a senior assistant county attorney at my office. And to my left is Nikki Woodard, our esteemed FOIA officer. Floor computer, please. All right, thank you very much. The title here is Spotsylvania County Freedom of Information Act Policy and Procedures. Members of the board, staff is certainly probably aware of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, but again, for members of the public, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, which we commonly refer to as FOIA, set out in Virginia Code Sections 2.2, 3700 et sec. It requires the release to members of the public, upon request, all non-exempt public records requested as defined in FOIA. Now, currently, the county does not have a formal internal policy regarding how to proceed with these requests, so we're here to recommend implementation of a county FOIA policy and procedures manual. Now, I want to make it clear to the board and the public that the county is, of course, aware of FOIA and works diligently to comply with requests for documents. I don't want to give the board or the public the impression that the county has not been accounting for FOIA over the years. It certainly has. This policy and procedures are geared towards county employees being the best that we can be, establishing best practices, and being even better internally from an efficiency standpoint. Transparency and compliance. FOIA is, of course, at its heart geared towards creating a transparent government. Spotsylvania County takes transparency seriously, as Mr. Taylor mentioned earlier. I think the county is on the leading edge of transparency with its online access of agendas and materials, meeting minutes and video, and its posting of searchable financial transactions. This policy is geared towards ensuring that the county continues to be transparent to its citizens as it continues to comply with FOIA. Expectations and training. An established policy and procedures is, of course, paramount in ensuring continued success in complying with FOIA. This policy and procedures establishes expectations for county employees and something to train toward. We can't reasonably expect that county employees will be able to digest FOIA as it's set out in the Virginia Code alone without guidance from county administration and the county attorney's office. Just as the county establishes an HR policy to let employees know what is expected of them generally as county employees, this policy and procedures will allow them to know exactly what is expected of them as it relates to FOIA. County admin in my office will be supplementing this guide with continued training annually as set out in the policy. So the policy doesn't stand alone. It is supported by county administration, the FOIA officer, representatives of departments, and our office who will provide training. Service and responsibility. In creating this policy, county admin and my office worked well together to establish procedures which will provide good services for our citizens while also being responsible to our taxpayers. FOIA is an unfunded mandate by the General Assembly. The county has to expend man-hours and materials to ensure compliance outside of its usual course of business, above and beyond. However, the General Assembly has allowed localities to recover its costs. So in creating this policy and procedures, we wanted to balance good and efficient service while also being accountable to taxpayers and recovering costs. To do this, we first established what is referred to in the policy as a de minimis response. These responses are created to address a situation where the county is able to quickly and efficiently provide a certain number of documents to a requester at a minimal cost to the county. For example, if somebody were to approach the building department and ask for an additional copy of their building permit, that may be something that can be easily and immediately printed out while the person waits and will consist of only a handful of pages. The policy would allow the employee at the front desk to provide the documents quickly and efficiently without taking the time to charge some minimal amount. So in these cases, the documents will be provided at no cost. The employee would simply log the transaction and be able to keep on moving on with her day-to-day, his or her day-to-day. Other requests, of course, require the county to devote more substantial resources to a response. It's not unheard of to receive a request that requires the county to pull and review over 1,000 pages. In cases requiring more than a de minimis response, this policy sets out the procedure for determining and assessing the county's cost to the requester. This ensures that the county is being responsible to its taxpayers while treating requesters fairly by standardizing those costs. It also acts as a check on serial requesters. I also want to note that recovering the county's costs is not a new policy. The county currently does this. So citizens at this point, at least those that have made requests, should be aware that there are costs associated with requesting public records. What is new, though, is the added benefit of allowing quick responses at no cost. Finally, there's flexibility to amend built in. Most changes to the policy will be driven by changes to the Virginia Code or due to increased efficiencies identified by county administration. Therefore, the policy as we've drafted it allows for the county administrator to amend the policy in consultation with the county attorney. But if the policy is amended by the county administrator, the policy requires that he inform the board. I imagine that would take the form of a memo to the board informing them of the change, informing you of the change of the policy. But at the end of the day, the board does retain the ability to amend the policy if it desires. County admin and I recommend that the policy be given effect on October 1st, 2018. This will allow us to train county employees on the new policy over the next few months. It's certainly a policy that requires some training where it would be difficult to hit the ground running for these departments, and we don't want to put anybody in that position. So the resolution that we've included with your materials for your consideration reflects this effective date. And with that, I'll take any questions. The policy is attached for your review, and that's it.
Any questions or discussion from the board? I take it you want a motion?
Yeah, motion and vote on the resolution before you, giving the policy, adopting the policy and making it effective October 1st, 2018 would be appreciated.
So moved.
We've got a motion from Mr. Skinner to adopt the policy and make it effective
October
1st. All right, Mr. Yakubowski.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
And chair's aye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. Look forward to the training exercises. Nikki, thank you. Next up, we have a presentation on proposed amendments to County Code Chapter 12, Article 7, which is our towing ordinance, towards the request of board's authorization to advertise a public hearing on the adoption of the proposed changes to the ordinance.
All right, the floor is yours.
All right. My name is First Sergeant Bronner. I'm over the Traffic Services Unit with the Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office. I'm also the chairman of our Towing Advisory Board. Just to give a little update on what that is, if you all aren't aware, or the public that's watching, the Towing Advisory Board was a board chartered by the Board of Supervisors where we deal with compliance and regulating issues dealing with contracts that the Sheriff's Office has for doing law enforcement-related tows in the County of Spotsylvania. Not only the tows that we do, but also the Virginia State Police. Part of our responsibility not only is to review those companies that may or may not be in violation, and we have a compliance portion that where we investigate complaints, but also anytime there's proposals to change that ordinance, we're supposed to look at those proposals, vote on them as a board, and recommend whether or not those proposed changes be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors, which is what brings us here today. We are bringing forward some ordinance changes. Now, I'm sure you all hopefully have had a chance to look at it. It looks like a lot, but you'll find that a lot of it has to do with some basic things. But before we get into that, I think it's appropriate that you all know who you're talking to. I've introduced myself. Mr. Stevens is with Coleman Towing. Senior Deputy Noakes is works with my unit and is also my lead compliance officer. So he's the one that when the complaints come in, he has the privilege of looking into those violations and then reporting back to the tow board what his findings are for any appropriate action. His protege in training is Deputy Cradgett back there. Deputy Noakes will probably be retiring here in the next few years, and this is a rather extensive program, so it's not something we want to drop in somebody's lap. So we're in the process of getting Deputy Cradgett up to speed to take over that program here in the next year or two. And Mrs. Desnoyer has the privilege of being the county attorney that is assigned to the tow board for our legal counsel, such as the county attorney is for y'all's board. So that's who we are. And with no further ado, I'd like to proceed. So, one more. Spotsylvania County has had what we probably consider one of the more progressive tow compliance programs in the area, and we pride ourselves on that. And having said that, some of what's come up here is not only dealing with tightening up the ordinance, but also looking forward to becoming in compliance with some potential future state mandates that are coming along. So like I said, there's a lot of information that we're going to go over, but it boils down to a few things. Number one, we found that the ordinance was lacking in some ways. There were certain terms that weren't defined that probably really should have been. To clean up the ordinance a little bit, some legal terminology or formats that need to be put in place in ordinances to make them to the standard that they should be. To get rid of some ambiguity that was put in some of the phrasing and some of the ordinance to make it seem like it's not so much a whim, but more definitive ways to deal with stuff. And also to codify the tow rates. Back a few years back, the board voted through resolution to approve the tow rates. However, that was never implemented into the tow ordinance. And through some conversations with the county attorney's office, it was felt that it was more appropriate to codify those rates, because then it would also give us some more teeth in dealing with any type of violations of that, because it would be part of the actual law. And it also makes it accessible to the public. One of the problems we have is I'll get calls, well, what are the tow rates? What are the tow rates? Well, the resolutions aren't published in MuniCode like the ordinance is. And by implementing those tow rates into the ordinance, then we can just refer the public to the MuniCode to look at that. And the last big thing is adding some ID requirements for IDs for the tow truck operators, which is sort of in line with what some other jurisdictions are doing. So that's sort of the quick gist of what all this is. And then we'll just go through it. As we go through the presentation, you'll find there may be some repetitive slides. That's because there's certain things, the same types of issues with verbiage, terminology definitions that need to be amended throughout the ordinance. So that is why some of it may seem repetitive to you all. I'll go over some stuff, but Senior Deputy Noakes is my guru of tow compliance, and Mr. Stevens is well regarded in the tow community and is a wealth of knowledge. So when you ask something, I'm probably going to be looking over there a lot, because I'm more the figurehead, and they're really our experts to help explain the reasoning behind some things. So basically, what's going on is, as I said, we're looking at some revisions. And a lot of it is more administrative, clerical, cleaning it up. Subsection B, adding to provide the background of the Towing Advisory Board and Towing Ordinance. Some stuff with subsection 3 added to include the Towing Advisory Board requirements with the first section of the Towing Ordinance rather than the definition, and capitalizing first letters of each defined term throughout the section. Again, a lot of this is just cleaning up the ordinance to make it more professional and more in compliance. This is just a little bit of background on the tow board, what our purpose is and its structure. It's 3 law enforcement, 3 from the tow community, and 1 citizen. First Sergeant Harrison from VSP, myself and Deputy Chad Tudor are the law enforcement reps. Mr. Stevens from Coleman, Mike Mitchin from North Star, and Casey Campbell from Campbell's Towing are the tow reps. And Mr. Barnes, the former county administrator here, is our citizen rep.
For Sergeant, we go back. If you go back to one side, I think it's important to note, at least for the board, that
let me go back.
The tow ordinance does not govern, private towers. These are to govern tows that are requested by law enforcement. So it doesn't reach all the way down to regulate those private tow companies. It's only with respect to when they're called for law enforcement.
For a law enforcement related tow. So if we go out on a crash scene and Mr. Marshall, we say, do you have a tow truck that you would like to come? And you go, I don't have a preference. Then we'll go Spotsylvania County next available. That's a law enforcement tow. So we have a list of companies that we inspect twice a year to make sure all their equipment's where it needs to be, their paperwork's straight and all that. And we go off that list. So it is only exclusively dealing with law enforcement related tows and when they're doing that tow. So just because a tow company may be on our law enforcement list, if the tow that somebody calls us about was a private tow, it didn't go through us in that list, we don't regulate that. That purview falls on the Attorney General's office in Virginia, and we only get involved in that if the county decided at some point down the road to get involved in that. But we're not involved.
That list that we use is now how long? It used to be like 13?
No, it
That's
was
in the region?
18 when I first came over tow. It's down to 17 now.
Okay.
The county did cap it a couple years ago at 12, but grandfathered in the existing companies. So eventually, as companies drop off, eventually we'll get to a point where we'll have 12. That's a lot to manage. Like I said, we inspect these companies twice a year. It takes Deputy Noakes and Senior Deputy Noakes and Deputy Craigett 3 weeks
So how does,
to go through and inspect all these companies.
so we have 17 on your list?
17
okay?
now,
Is your goal is to not fill those through attrition?
Yeah.
And then we get to 12, then somebody drops off. How do we go about, is there a waiting list if once we get down that way?
Well, we don't have a waiting.
No, it's okay.
We currently don't have a waiting list. We'd certainly advertise if a position ever came open, and we'd leave that open for Spotsylvania businesses. So, but we currently have no waiting list.
Okay, thank you.
And the reason why Deputy Noakes stays Spotsylvania business is part of the requirement in our ordinance is they have to have a yard in Spotsylvania County to be on our tow list. So. Sorry, shouldn't have turned that off. Adds or substantially revises the definitions of several terms to improve non-tower awareness of contents and increased enforceability. Ms. Desnoyer did an awesome job on this PowerPoint, by the way.
Basically to enhance the definition section, we don't want, and we have some confused citizens up there, we don't want that to occur. There are a lot of tow, and when I went through here looking at these definitions, there are a lot of tow-centric definitions here. I don't know, or at least before going through here, I didn't know what a, let's see, let me just pick something out here. I think a winch or heavy-duty something or other hydraulic wheel lift was, so we wanted to make that clear. So if somebody, a citizen or whoever, a supervisor, whoever is pulled is curious what a hydraulic wheel lift is or something, and you'll see the definitions throughout the statute. What that is, they can go through and look at that. Also, there needs to be some consistency between the sheriff's office, the towers, as well as the courts as well, so the judges can look and also see what those terms are.
So we're talking about definitions, so obviously the question is going to be, well, where do you all get these from? So one was the existing tow ordinance. It wasn't totally devoid of definitions. However, not everything was defined that should have been. The Code of Virginia, towing ordinances of other localities, established towing practices and standards, and dictionaries. So this, if you need me to read through them, I can, but these are a list of all the words that we're adding or substantially revising the definition of.
It's okay if he kind of expedites through these.
Yeah, I don't need to read through this, do I?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay, all right. Y'all want to get out here tonight, right? Again, then we were dealing with regular tow, then we're also adding language to heavy-duty tow. So that's a heavy-duty wrecker there, that big one. That, I don't know, it looks like a tractor trailer to me. That's your heavy-duty wreckers. Obviously, you've probably seen them out on the road that deal with the big stuff that the smaller trucks can't get. So we had to do some verbiage and definitions and all that, also with the heavy-duty language. Changing some terms throughout the section, making word changes to match other newer revised definitions to reflect the stage of the process, and again, capitalizing letters. So again, you're going to see some repeats as we go through different areas here. We're just trying to clean up the ordinance. Really defining what storage sites are, and there are standards, so we don't end up with, unacceptable storage sites such as this.
Top left was actually a Virginia, I'm sorry, top left was actually a area in Virginia.
We'll go on talking about subsection 1. It clarifies that a new application for towing service shall be submitted annually. Removes possible immediate suspension language with no listed decision maker, and places the violation under procedures of section 12, 242, and 243. And I talked earlier about some ambiguity. The way it was worded, it was sort of open-ended, so we wanted to tighten that up to actually reference the violations of the section and the procedures that were going to be followed for that. Subsection 3 is amended to add an executed statement of indemnification, which has been an insurance requirement. Subsection 3A and B requires time in business and time at business address information and application. Subsection 12-283M adds written indemnity statement to application requirements. Going on, former subsection 4 has been moved for inclusion as an application requirement to new subsection 12-2283M. Basically, it fit better there than where it was at. It had more flow, basically. Subsection 5 has been changed to subsection 4, which clarifies that applicants do not need to complete the requirements unless or until their applications are approved. Uses proper terminology, again, capitalization, and makes minor wording changes to match other new or revised definitions. Then we're moving on to section 230. Subsection B and C detail the requirements to be determined a towing business upon submission of an application for towing service agreement. Again, dealing with storage lot and storage site, and throughout the section, capitalizing minor grammatical changes. Section 231 then adds authorized heavy-duty towers throughout the section, capitalizes the first letter of each defined term throughout, minor word changes again, more administrative stuff. Section 231, subsection G specifies a maximum 1 hour law enforcement requested towing scene arrival time for our authorized heavy-duty towers. So where that comes in is right now a regular tow. If you have a contract with us, you're supposed to be able to be on scene within 30 minutes of being requested. That's so we can get there, get the road cleaned up, and get everybody moving. Because, as we all know, when traffic gets tied up, it queues up pretty quick. And the longer that you're on a scene working a crash, tying up traffic, your likelihood of secondary incidents, crashes, and all that greatly increase. So that's the premise behind getting quick clear. And that's a program that's coming out in the state down the road that, Paul, they're testing that in Northern Virginia, right? Quick clearance right now?
It's in Richmond. It's a pilot right now.
Okay. In Richmond, they're doing a pilot program on the interstate with quick clearance. So anyway, we didn't have any type of standard for heavy duty. It was sort of open-ended, so this will add an hour requirement. And the reason why it's longer, there's a lot less heavy-duty wreckers to service the whole county. Is it 3 companies now? There's 3. We used to have 4. Now we're down to 3 companies. And I think they're all located in the east end of the county too, right? So, I mean, if you deal with a heavy-duty wreck off of 522 and Zachary Taylor Highway and Monrovia Road, I mean, there ain't no way anybody's getting out there from the east end in 30 minutes, especially with a heavy-duty wrecker. So that's why there's a longer time span allowed heavy duties to respond to a scene. Did I miss anything on that, Paul? Or
It just clears it up. Oh, sorry. Basically, it just clears it up. What was happening was when the sheriff's department would call for a heavy wrecker, they were held to that same 30-minute requirement, and it wasn't possible to get the equipment there within 30 minutes. You would lose your turn. They'd go to the next wrecker. It was just a vicious cycle that continued to repeat until somebody finally just said, yeah, I'll be there in 30 minutes, and they'd go and be there in an hour. So basically, it's just really cleaning that up so that they got there within the time frame, and the sheriff's department dispatchers had some kind of direction to go.
making it more practical. Subsection H removes the sheriff's complete subjectivity by placing the matter in the complaint and hearing process set forth in the provisions of section 1240 through 243. So there was some verbiage in there that made it seem like it was just sort of like the sheriff could do what he wanted. That wasn't really the intent, so we wanted to clean it up a little bit. And that complaint and hearing process dealing with the tow board, the requirements for us for notice for them, when they need to be, giving them the opportunity to come forth with the representation and those type of things is what's covered in those sections. Going on to section 231 still, subsection S increases percentage of tow truck operators from towing business required to attend a nationally accredited towing course from 50 to 75%, adds towing certification maintenance requirements, and adds requirements that effective July 1st, 2018, which is why we're here in June, trying to get it to the public hearing before the end of June. All authorized towers and authorized heavy-duty towers registered with the county will be required to attend SHARP 2 Strategic Highway Research Program 2 training, free traffic incident management responder training by Virginia State Police. And basically what that is, and that's all fire EMS and public safety, law enforcement, whatnot, VDOT even, and all them have gone through this. It's dealing with scene safety and how to clear up traffic scenes effectively and quickly to get that roadway back open. And it's we want that with the tow trucks because it's not a vacuum. We all work together out on the scene. VDOT's helping us, fire EMS, us, the tow truck drivers. So if they have some knowledge on this, then we're all sort of on the same page. Moving on to section 232, adds authorized heavy-duty tower language throughout the section. Again, capitalization, minor word changes, revises certain standard authorized tower vehicle requirements, adds requirements for authorized heavy-duty towers, including all of the heavy-duty towing and recovery units and towing equipment required to be on a heavy-duty tow rotation list. And Paul, this is coming about because of requirements that are coming from the state down the road, is that correct?
Yeah, so basically the state's in a pilot program now in Richmond, in that whole district for quick clearance. And ultimately what's going to progressively happen is they will work their way right up 95. Spotsylvania has always been at the forefront for the mandated towing requirements, thereby allowing the companies to work with the sheriff's department and set the standards. And that's kind of where we're going with this right now, is trying to work with the sheriff's department to set those standards before we're being told what we have to do.
And what these are doing, this is all stuff that we deal with when we do the inspections. So these are requirements that these companies are going to have on their trucks, those trucks that they're sending to the scene. You know, certain types of chains, this, that, and the other. So we ensure that when we have these companies coming out that have contracts with us to do these law enforcement tows, that they're ready to go and they've got what they need, or they can readily get access to what they need. You know, and the tow companies, they work very well together. You know, a guy may have be the guy that comes out on the list. He might not have that equipment. You know, they find out, hey, so they may call Paul at Coleman's and he'll come out and help them out and all that stuff. But it creates some minimum standards of equipment that these companies have to have. And when Senior Deputy Oakes and Deputy Cradgett go and do these inspections twice a year, not only are they making sure that the vehicles are in safe operation order, but they're also ensuring that these companies have what's required for them to be on our contract, to make sure they have the equipment and assets needed to effectively do the job. So.
I got a quick question for you. If you go back one slide to the first bullet, the Nationally Accredited Towing Course, is that a one-time course or is that a yearly course that they have to attend?
So normally a nationally accredited course lasts anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And then you have to go back and recertify or get re-updated information or stuff. So there's very few that are permanent. You take a class and you're good. You have to continually, you know, evolve and work on your education or the education of your employees. So as you have turnover and attrition through your company, you're constantly juggling that ball to make sure they're staying in there. The difficult thing for Spotsylvania as far as training goes is that there's none really here. So either it needs to be an online course, or it has to be something where a trainer comes in, or there's a class held, and we need the tow board's responsibilities to get that information to those towers. Hey, listen, there's going to be a training class. You need to get your guys certified.
Right. Is there a large cost to this class, or does it
So,
vary?
I will tell you that the last two classes that were held in Spotsylvania, I think the first class had 77 operators, and it's closed class, only 2 Spotsylvania operators. And the last class had 57 or 58. That was free to all parties.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
And what that does is we're making sure that, again, this is everything we look at when we're doing those inspections. We're making sure that they have operators, these companies have operators that have the training and know what they're doing. And I didn't realize it till dealing with the tow companies. I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, there's skill sets and finesse and all that to properly do this stuff. And this helps to make sure that the companies that we have on our rotation have the qualified personnel to do it.
Right. I'm all for having the qualified personnel. I was just making sure we weren't getting ready to make a 25% cost increase to somebody who owns a towing company.
Right.
So basically what it is, right now, the Spotsylvania requires 50%. And the challenge is that a lot of the companies have 1 to 2 employees. So what's happening is one employee is getting certified, the other's not. And ultimately that employee leaves, it leaves that company with nobody. Or the bigger companies that have the attrition, a larger attrition rate or whatever, however you want to word it, those companies are, staying right on the line, if you will, instead of getting the proper training for all employees. They're just getting enough to get certified. The Sheriff's Department noticed that trend about 1.5 years ago. They brought it to the board twice, and finally the tow board started to take notice of it and said, listen, we need to move that number up enough just so it's over 50%, being the fact that you have that 1, 2, 3 employee window right there. So if that employee leaves, moves to another person, now you drop down, or if you gain 2 employees, you're up to where you need to be. It's a constant juggling act, but what the ultimate goal is that if you have 2 employees and they're on the scene and you're the owner, you now have 2 employees who are, nationally trained, and they understand what's going on. There's a vast disparity in towing, and we can go on for hours about that end of it, but it's whether or not the owner feels the importance of training and education for their employees. And I know in the real world, you guys think, oh yeah, it's training, you got to be trained. Not in the towing world, because everybody's worried that the tower is going to leave and go to the next guy and take that information with them, which is the wrong mentality. And that's why the tow board kind of moved that number up, was to say, listen, it's not about financial burden on the company, it's more about educating the industry.
Okay.
Operators.
But you're saying the classes were free, so it shouldn't be a financial burden.
No, some classes you pay for. The first thing you see up on there, that certificate right there cost me about $2,500. But I'm also certified to operate a crane. So
But we're not requiring this
Nope.
75% to have his $2,500.
Nope, that's just a certificate that I got. I'm just using that as an
So
example.
the minimum required certificate, there are classes out there that are free of charge?
Absolutely free.
Okay, thank you.
To go into some of the requirements, the new requirements of tow vehicles. In order to do that, I gave you a little background here of the parts of the tow truck, because if you're anything like me, you don't really know anything about that. So you have the wrecker crane, boom, well, you can read it for yourselves, but that will be a little bit of a basis for you for what's to come as far as the parts of the regular wreckers and regular tow trucks, and then we'll get into the heavy-duty tow trucks. So if you want to take it from there.
Okay, so minimum vehicle requirements for authorized towers. I can read through all this if you want. No? Mr. Skinner's shaking his head no?
No.
Okay, all right. This is basically what we were talking about. These are the standards that we're proposing ad nauseum to make sure that everybody is in compliance.
We're going to have all Are we going to have this online?
It
at
was
some point?
posted online, was it? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but this is all the little nuts and bolts of what we've been talking, leading up to, is all the requirements, the type of equipment that these companies need to have to be on our tow contract.
What we're trying to avoid, of course, Cletus with the bungee cord and the
I think I've
thing
seen a
in the
couple of
back.
these going down Livingston.
I definitely have down Post Oak Road.
And that's the purpose of this. We want to make sure that when people ask us to have a wrecker come to tow their car because they don't know a preference, that reflects on the sheriff's office and the county as a whole. And we don't want, Billy Bob coming out there with his, straps and bungee cord, hooking it up and going down the road. We want the tow companies that are contracted with us to be professional and competent. And we're very fortunate that we have tow companies in this county that are like that, but I attribute that fact to the fact that Senior Deputy Noakes has done an outstanding job with our compliance over the last several years. We are not running into issues that other jurisdictions are with their tow companies. And those are the big heavy-duty wreckers and all that and the requirements for them. And obviously these tonnage requirements and all that, that's so they can tow or be big enough to tow what needs to be towed. The reason why you see other type of equipment, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why you see other type of equipment, sometimes it's not just about towing the vehicle. Sometimes you can have other issues that come out of that crash that you need other types of equipment. Perfect example, 2 weeks ago, when the log truck turned over on Brock Road near Jackson Trail West, and we had Brock Road shut down like most of the day, because that was more than just the heavy-duty tow truck coming out there. VDOT and cranes and all that stuff had to come out there and remove the log. It was a fully loaded log truck, and it took a good majority of the day to get that road open. So with some of these companies, we want to make sure, especially on the heavy-duty end, where there's more of a likelihood to need some additional resources to make sure that they have or have access to these things. Yeah. Yeah.
And so what you're looking at now, this is a list of requirements as far as we're not required to own this equipment you're looking at. We're not required to own a dump truck or a dump trailer or anything, but we are required to have a lease agreement with somebody that can be on call. It doesn't say it there, so I just wanted to clarify that because.
Moving on to subsection 232E, adds requirements that all towing equipment its size and capacity shall be maintained and registered per county requirements. Moving on to 233, adds authorized heavy-duty language throughout, capitalization, storage lot, storage site, minor word changes. Again, you're seeing this again and again throughout the sections to get it all cohesive and in compliance. And talks about taking that sole subjective discretion out and referring it back to something more concrete. Allowing adjacent locality municipal storage sites where authorized tower, authorized heavy-duty towers, businesses located. Moving on to 234, again, adding the heavy-duty language, capitalization, minor word changes, and clarification of language regarding inspections added to subsections A and B. 235, again, add an authorized tower stuff, capitalization, minor word changes, subsections A and B clarifies who may pick up towed vehicles from storage sites, adds lien holders to those authorized to pick up towed vehicles. There were some failures there were some weaknesses in the existing ordinance dealing with that, that had caused some problems for the tow companies turning vehicles back over. And so this gives the tow companies a little more flexibility for vehicle release that allows them to be in compliance with our ordinance. I believe it was like they had to be the registered owner, right? But, I mean, maybe mom and dad want to come by and get it for the registered owner. Well, there wasn't any leeway, so that's what we're working with to change. Subsection 236 incorporates towing fees authorized in Resolution 2013-94 in the towing ordinance. This is what I talked about at the beginning. The board has already approved these as a resolution a few years back. So these are not new rates. The rates we're incorporating are exactly the same as was approved in the resolution. We just want to codify that, and in the next couple slides, go through that and what those rates are. Do you all need me to go through that or no?
No.
Okay, just
And
making sure.
One question,
Yes.
please. I think most important is the prices are what they are. They're not going to change. So if they're with one of your groups, it's going to be right. The question is, would you explain to the owners or the public the fees, the storage fees? I believe the first 24 hours or when I was listening to you over there, how long can we tow to your place, keep it there before they have additional money paid for just the storage there?
Okay, so we go on a 24-hour system. So if the sheriff's office, calls for a tow truck or the Virginia State Police, and one of these requested towers tow the vehicle, the first 24 hours has no storage on it. It's just the tow fee for whatever service they provided. So if they pick it up at 4 p.m., it'd go to 4 p.m. the next day.
Okay.
So then 4:01, that starts a new day, and that's when another storage fee will starts 2 days of the storage then. So you got the first day and the second day. So I've explained this numerous times to citizens, and I'll continue doing it, when they call in. Getting this online, though, and having this out in the ordinance, I think it's imperative so they can see it. And but most people, they're explaining right there on the scene what their responsibilities are.
You can skip through the
Thank
rest.
you.
And these are just the heavy-duty fees then. Obviously, they're going to be more because of the nature of the tow and all that stuff. Okay, the next big, sort of the big addition to the ordinance is the ID requirement. Wait, are we at ID yet? Okay. So Section 237 adds authorized heavy-duty tow language for public safety purposes, adds additional law enforcement tow requirements. And this is when we get into the ID requirement. Adds requirements that all tow truck operators have tow ID cards, included our requirements, etc. And subsection B includes additional traffic safety and lighting requirements for law enforcement requested towing scenes. Senior Deputy Noakes, could you sort of explain to them real quick the importance of implementing an ID? Because that's probably going to be a question, why are we adding an ID program that we haven't had? And I think that Senior Deputy Noakes can probably explain that best.
Well, it's all about security. It's about protecting the citizens. It's an extension of law enforcement services. A lot of these people are involved in crashes, and they're all going through a dramatic experience to begin with. And when we're calling these tow companies to come out and tow these families away, we're putting these families in these tow trucks. And, sometimes we have a lot of turnover with personnel driving these tow trucks, and it's important for us to know who is behind the wheel of these tow trucks. We do have a criteria for it. We don't want to put reckless drivers or people with, any type of criminal history that would harm any of the citizens, performing these services for the Sheriff's Office or the Virginia State Police. So by having the cards issued to the drivers, they would report, to us what they've been going through, what's on their records, et cetera. And of course, if they're involved in crashes afterwards, they need to report that to us also. So when the deputies, we have a couple hundred deputies now in the sheriff's office, and when they're working a crash, they have no idea. They don't know what this program's about. They just call for a tow truck and hope that one shows up in 30 minutes. This helps them understand and see that, the driver's been checked out, the tow truck's been checked out, and, they're available for, to extend services, from us. Right. So the ID cards will also show their certifications. You certainly don't want a light-duty tower operating a rotator and hurting somebody. You guys have to understand that this equipment that they use for towing, even though it makes things much simpler, it's very dangerous. And if you put lines across roads, you're dealing with equipment that you're not trained to deal with. You can hurt people. So their certifications will go on these ID cards. Okay.
Do we have a cost associated with this also, with the cards and doing background checks on your tow truck drivers? Do we know what that cost would be? Or?
The cost is going to be $5 per driver, per card. When they initially put their application in, there's no charge, okay? Once they're approved, there's a $5 cost that it costs them to get the ID from us. Okay. Now, these IDs, will be good for 2 years, or if they change companies, et cetera, they'll have to get renewed, et cetera. But, we keep the cost very limited. That's what it cost us to do it. And it's part of the initial, when they're putting in the applications.
As far as checking their driver's record and stuff, you're going to be checking that, or is it going to be off of their word? Because doesn't it cost to do that through DMV?
Well, anything we do would have to go through the state police. We wouldn't go through DMV unless we're doing driver's checks, running their licenses, et cetera. But we do that at the sheriff's office. It's already set up through Virginia when they're getting their tow permit.
Right, so no additional cost.
Right, so
Okay.
Betro checks that for us.
Thank you.
Just go through the Going through the last few slides quickly, just more of the capitalizations and word changes. This one, section 241, removes some gender, it adds gender-neutral language. There's some pictures of ladies in their tow trucks there. Again, and corrects improper grammar in this one. This 243 adds some legal terms, proper legal terms, clarifies the process, makes it less wordy rather than just adding lawyer words to make us feel important. There is actually a reason for it. More of that. Now, in changing the meeting so y'all can go visit the White House, we will, because there is a training requirement in the section, having it on June 28th is fine. But what we're asking for and what we'd ask that their motion be for is that the ad for the public hearing that be authorized. We were going to have that, so the public hearing be on June 26th, but if it could be run, and so the ad could be run for June the 28th, but what needs to happen is authorization for a advertisement for the public hearing.
You just need a authorization to advertise it for the next meeting?
Yes.
Whenever that may be.
Whenever it may be, but there are some things in here that start June the 1st.
July.
For the training. I'm sorry, July the 1st for training. But, and then after that, if the amendments pass, they apply immediately. We're seeking tonight.
Can we get a motion to have for the public hearing? Motion by Mr. Skinner to approve the public hearing for this towing ordinance amendments for June 28th. Mr. Yakubowski.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
Chair's aye.
Thank you
y'all.
all.
Hopefully we avoid
Chairman,
Mr. Taylor, go ahead.
in consideration of the hour, I think we would like to flip to 6:30 public presentations and the public hearing,
Yep.
given that it's nearly 7. Mark, do you know if anyone has signed up for public? Ah, here's Amy.
Amy, anybody signed up for the public presentations? No? Is there anybody that did not sign up for the public presentations at 6:30 that would like to come up and speak at this time? Come on up.
Didn't bring anything for a presentation, but I did have some concerns about the development that's proposed at that location.
We need your name and voting district.
That's, the public hearing for that is coming up. So this is just for other matters that aren't scheduled for public hearing. Are you here for the Roseland?
Yes.
Townhomes?
Yeah,
That's coming up right after this.
Okay, all right.
All right. Anybody else not sign up for public presentations that wishes to speak at this time? Public presentations only. Closed public presentations.
Patrick, you shouldn't have moved.
Yep.
That brings us to R170013 Spectrum Partner Investments, LLC, Roseland Townhomes. It's in the Battlefield voting district. Good evening, Patrick.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the introduction. For the record, Patrick White, Planning Department, Spotsylvania County. This case is the Roseland case. It's R1713. The applicant, Spectrum Partner Investments LLC, requests the rezoning of just over 1 acre of property from Residential 1 to MU2, or Mixed Use 2, with proffers, to allow for the development of 14 townhomes. There are 6 total parcels requested to be rezoned. All of the properties are located in the primary development boundary, and all are identified for mixed-use development per the comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending approval with proffers dated April 9th, 2018. The Planning Commission recommended approval on May 2nd with a 7-0 vote. The properties are located on Hudgens Road, approximately 560 feet southeast of the signalized intersection of Route 1 and Hudgens Road, and approximately 800 feet from the intersection of Lafayette Boulevard with Hudgens Road. All of the properties constituting the proposed development site are presently zoned R1. The abutting car dealership to the northwest is zoned C3, as is the other car dealership located across the street to the northeast. The Central Virginia Housing Coalition office building is located to the southeast and is zoned Office 1, and 3 single-family homes abut the site to the southwest, all zoned R1. The top photo is a view of the subject property. It depicts the only single-family home that's on the property presently. The bottom photo displays the frontage of the subject property along Hudgens Road. In these 2 photos, the top photo is viewing down Hudgens Road. I took this from across the street of the subject parcel. The fencing depicted is located between Hudgens Road and additional parking that's used by Radley Chevrolet. The bottom photo is viewing towards Route 1, displaying the 2 car dealerships, and in the distance, the traffic light. The applicant's GDP depicts a 14 townhome development with access provided by Hudgens Road. If approved, the proposal is estimated to generate an additional 82 vehicles per day. Hudgens Road is estimated to move approximately 1,500 vehicles per day presently. The red highlights depict internal and frontage sidewalks proposed by the applicant. The frontage sidewalk will be dedicated to VDOT within a 10-foot right-of-way. The 2 additional internal sidewalks will be privately maintained by the HOA, along with their internal roads. An interparcel connection is proposed to the office structure to the southeast, and there is a small portion of the property that lies within the Highway Corridor Overlay District. Each of the townhomes is proposed to have an internal garage, and each townhome will have its own driveway, which can accommodate at least 1 other vehicle. A total of 10 parking spaces are being constructed to accommodate guests. The area depicted in green is proposed by the applicant. It is a modified transitional screen 1, consisting of an internal 8-foot-high fence with 8.25 feet of landscaping external to the fence. The planting area is proposed to be planted with 1 large evergreen and 1 medium evergreen every 20 feet. The fence is proposed to be made of wood with concrete capped brick columns every 10 feet. The applicant has also proposed to run this fence down the northwest property line adjacent to the car dealership voluntarily. Transportation impacts from the proposed project are estimated to be minor. The proposed development is estimated to generate approximately 82 vehicles a day. Hudgens Road, as I mentioned, moves approximately 1,500 presently. Both of these intersections are, however, functioning at a level of service E. Hudgens itself is functioning at a level of service D during AM peak and E during PM peak. This is largely attributable to the use of the roadway for commercial purposes by neighboring businesses and by cut-through traffic to and from Route 1 in Lafayette. Per the Department of Motor Vehicles, there were no reported collisions on Hudgens at either intersection from 2015 through 17. Lastly, apart from the sidewalk and the right-of-way dedication along the frontage of the property, no other transportation improvements are proposed. The Roseland project before you was analyzed by staff and found generally consistent with land use, public facilities, historic resources, and natural resource elements. Staff did observe some capacity concerns, particularly at Fire Station 4, Massaponax High School, and Battlefield Middle School, which would result from the project. However, there are no current projects identified in the CIP for which legal cash proffers could be collected. Contributions are proposed by the applicant towards a county-wide fire and rescue training facility and for 5 improvements to the county park system. The applicant's financial documentation notes that the townhomes are proposed to range from 1,800 to 2,200 square feet and are estimated to be priced at $250,000 per unit. The applicant's fiscal analysis estimates Roseland to generate approximately $2,060 annually. The county's model, however, indicates that the project would result in an annual deficit of approximately $22,557 based on the average assessed values of the Lakeside and Lafayette crossing developments. A discrepancy between these two figures is common as the applicant's fiscal model factors in off-site tax generation, generally not accounted for in the county's model. The applicant's submitted proffers include conformance with the GDP, 14 townhomes would be constructed, no accessory apartments. Rear decks, if any, would be restricted to the first floor. HOA covenants and restrictions would be placed to maintain value, uniformity, and common maintenance. 10 feet of frontage would be dedicated to VDOT for the new sidewalk. A stub will be created to the neighboring office to the southeast. And lastly, 0.152 acres of open space would be maintained by the HOA for aesthetics. Additionally, the applicant is proposing a cash contribution of $132.70 per unit, which staff has found to be legally acceptable and in accordance with current proffer regulations. In summary, staff found the following findings in favor. The project is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan. The mixed-use land use area is intended to create a more dense form, which the applicant has proposed. Where possible, the applicant's proposed cash proffers towards capital facility impacts that are specifically attributable to the project. The project is an infill development project on an otherwise underutilized property with available utility connections. And staff found the following against. Apart from the commercial and office uses immediately adjacent, the remainder of the neighborhood, including the 3 homes to the rear of the site, are largely single-family residences. One of the goals in the mixed-use district is to provide infill development, but it should be sensitive to the context of the neighborhood. The bulk of this project tests the limits of neighborhood compatibility. Financially, the county's model indicates that the project will yield an annual deficit of approximately $22,500, and the applicant submitted FIA reports an annual contribution of just over $2,000. As I mentioned earlier, the county's model is often lower than the applicant's due to varying assumptions and the applicant's inclusion of spin-off tax generation, notably job generation, and additional taxation of new residents' needs for goods and services. Lastly, both of the intersections of Hudgens Road are functioning at a level of service E. No improvements are warranted by the small increase of trips proposed by this rezoning, and there is no expectation that this project will relieve current cut-through traffic presently on Hudgens Road. Finally, based on the proposal's general consistency with the comp plan in consideration of the findings noted above, staff is recommending approval of this project with proffers dated April 9th, 2018. I know the applicant is present and has a PowerPoint of their own, and I will stand by for your questions.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did I understand you to say that the county's fiscal model does not count tax payments by the new residents?
What it doesn't, one of the things that we've noticed, it does not, there's room for improvement in its counting of, is the additional goods and services that would be purchased by those residents.
So sales taxes and that sort of thing. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. You can come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and other members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Charlie Payne with the law firm Herschel Fleischer and represent the applicant. Appreciate your time this evening. Thank you also to staff for his presentation. I will be brief, and I do have a PowerPoint, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. As staff has noted, this project does include 6 parcels. It's over an acre in total size. It is located off of Hudgens Road near the intersection of Route 1. The request is a rezoning from R1 to MU2. Just to give you a little context here, the comprehensive plan comprehensive plan for this area is mixed use. And as you may know, this particular neighborhood is a fairly older neighborhood. You've seen some infield investment, new homes in that particular neighborhood. You've seen the success of townhomes at Summerfield just across Route 1, which is also in this mixed-use area. You'll also note that we are surrounded on 3 sides by commercial. So from the purposes of transitioning for a project like this, and I'll show you an overview here in a second, between commercial and the single-family detached, at this close proximity to the intersection, this seems to be a very positive plan for that purposes. There's also a lot of success for the townhouses off of Lafayette Boulevard. The price range is very similar to what we're proposing here, about $250,000 with pretty much full build-out, which is where a lot of our first-time home buyers and local workforce are buying. So this is a type of a product that is something that is attractive to buyers in this county, especially those who are first-time home buyers, don't want a larger footprint, who do want a townhouse project, and they want to live in the county in which they work. Again, it's a really low-dense project. We're talking about 14 units only. Again, the project area will include open space of about 15%, and it's anticipated if this is approved that we could build these units out in about a couple of years. As staff had noted, the surrounding area, again, the north and west is bordered by Shee Toyota and Radley on the other side of the road from Hudgens. To our immediate east is Virginia Housing Coalition, which is an office use. To our south are some residential units as well. They will be buffered with fencing and with landscaping. Here's a GDP, which is in your packet. You see Hudgens basically to your north, the entrance point there. To the south are the single-family detached units we discussed, and again, to our west and to our east are commercial uses, both the car dealerships and the office. This next slide, I think, is very helpful to sort of show the buffering, the landscaping, and the units, how they're laid out. It's basically an L-shape layout. You'll see that most of the units are up against the commercial components that surround us. The units to the south will include fencing and buffering and landscape buffering. Any decks on these units will be ground level, so they won't be looking over the fencing on a second floor or something of that nature at our neighbors. Of course, we'll have additional parking for guests. I think there's 10 additional spaces, and each unit will have 2 parking spaces. There are no cultural, environmental resources or impacts or historic overlay issues on the site, and there's no cemeteries. Again, with the comp plan purposes, this project is consistent with the comp plan. Again, this is a mixed-use designated area, infill project. We are surrounded by, again, commercial and other residential uses, and again, I think there's a very good transitional use that close to the intersection at Route 1. And it is obviously located within your primary development district, which encourages higher density and connection to public utilities. Fiscal benefits, we are estimating that the price range for these homes will be $250,000. Again, and they're in that pretty good sweet spot for folks who are first-time home buyers at 1,800 to 2,200 square feet. Very nice quality product, very similar to what's surrounding us. It will be a job creator, obviously, for during construction and after construction. We anticipate about $445,000 annually in earnings. The difference in the model that we run in with the county looks only at the real estate assessments that are generated from the site. We look at personal property taxes that are generated from the site, real estate taxes, and of course, spin-off sales taxes as well. So that's where the difference is. Schools that be impacted, again, you heard staff discuss this, is Spotsylvania Elementary, Battlefield Middle, and Massaponax. Again, these type of units, based on the school board numbers, generate about a half a kid per unit. That would be 8 kids or so is anticipated from the site. But again, if you take the by right units out, which are 6, you're basically looking at a net number of 4 for purposes of evaluating impact. But even if you just looked at the max number of kids, you're talking about 8 children being generated from this project. Again, very low dense infill development. And as staff had noted, there's adequate capacity to accommodate the students. Transportation, again, access would be from Hudgens Road. We will build a sidewalk along Hudgens Road and also internally, as staff had noted. We will dedicate right-of-way, as did our neighbor in its prior rezoning, the Central Virginia Housing Coalition, for the ability to expand Hudgens in that area. And look at just the peak hour trips from a project like this, very, very low, with no impacts on the level of services at either intersection. 6 trips basically in the AM and a little over 7 in the PM peak hours. And again, our anticipation is because of the light at Route 1, a lot of these folks are just going to go, right across the commercial uses to get to the intersection at 1 to get out versus going to Lafayette. Public safety or minimal impacts on fire and rescue, which we have proffered for. Fire Station 4 is about a mile away. And as I stated, we've provided some cash proffers for those impacts on fire and rescue facilities. Again, reiterating, we're dedicating right-of-way, about 10 feet in right-of-way, 1,500 square feet total on our frontage. And we agreed to stub the road. This is a VDOT request internally for an interparcel connection to our east. And again, we've discussed the cash proffers to address impacts. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the board? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll open up the public hearing for comments for R17-0013 Spectrum Partner Investments, Roslyn Townhomes, Battlefield Voting District. Sir, I think you wanted to comment?
There are 2 citizens signed up to speak.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
The first speaker is Lee Milstead, followed by David Keene.
Thank you for letting me speak. I have been there going on 40 years. I am there to protect my home. This is a 3-story, 14 number units that's going to overlook the whole neighborhood. They are nice enough to put up an 8-foot fence to hide a 3-story townhouse. That's a good buffer zone. Also, if you look in the back, the entrance back there is leading into their property, their adjacent property, which is 01. Eventually, they're going to add for more townhouses, and it's just going to continue on. Once this is approved, there's nothing we can do to stop it. There is no multi-use in that area right now. There are no 3-story townhouses in that area. And it's surrounded with C3 on 2 sides and 01 on 1 side. Now, the big thing is Hudgens Road is originally a driveway. The real Hudgens Road is 1 block over. It goes right through their property. I haven't been able to see where any of the county has deeded it over to them years ago. If you look at the piece of paper that you have, it says unaddressed properties. Well, that means that there was a road there, and in some maps, the road is there. I have copies of maps at the house from way back where the original plots were. And Hudgens Road, I have no idea why it's not there now, but I would like to know how they got a hold of it or if it's been deeded over by the county onto it. But that's the original Hudgens Road, is 1 block over, not the one you see in front of them. Also, I have a petition here of 15 people, neighbors, against this. We do not want this, and it's going to change the whole dynamics of the neighborhood. And I'm just fighting for my home is all I'm doing. And I have to be the one that's got to live there and look at it every day. Years ago, the property next to me was zone C, C3, And now, every night that I have to sit there and have a light in my window from the parking lot, I have to live with that. The people that okayed it do not live there. So I'm the one that has to put up with it, and I'm just protecting my house is all I'm doing. Thank you. Did you want the petition?
You can give it to Amy over here, and she'll
Okay.
circulate it to us.
David Keene.
Thanks for giving me a few minutes to speak. I'm pretty new to the area. I moved there, bought my house there about 5 years ago, and I knew that it was slated for redevelopment at one point or another, and I'm not opposed to a development in principle. I do have some concerns about this development, and my concerns stem from the water drainage issues that we have in our neighborhood, which are pretty bad. And where they want to build the townhomes is directly in a riparian zone where the water all flows. So we're going to be increasing surface level water. We already have the storm drainage pipes backing up, water spilling over. I've had to regrade my entire yard with the front end loader and lay down sand, and I still have flooding in my garage. When I brought this up at the community meeting, the county sent somebody out. They blamed it on VDOT. VDOT came out. They blamed it on the county. According to the U.S. Geological Survey maps, these are county drainage right-of-ways that you're impinging on and are violating the 1989 Chesapeake Bay Protection Act. So, it's, if they want to build it, if there's not enough ameliorative steps taken to alleviate the drainage concerns, then I think that we need to report it to the state because the county's breaking the law. No, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
There are no other citizens signed up to speak.
Is there anybody else that did not sign up that wishes to speak on this in reference to this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. You can come on up.
Chair.
Mr. Skinner, go ahead.
So, Charlie, let me ask you this, please.
Yes, sir.
Are we breaking the law?
You're not breaking the law. We're required to capture and treat water on site. We're going to have curb and gutter as well and underground retention, bioretentions to capture the runoff. So water will not be running off our site.
Patrick, has the county been able to verify any of this or taking a look at it? Because I know over on Mosby Street, same issues.
I can't really attest one way or the other about the existing drainage of that neighborhood. When these projects do develop, though, they handle their own stormwater. They traditionally improve the stormwater situation on a parcel. So I haven't heard the applicant propose to fix the stormwater throughout the neighborhood, and I don't think it would be fair of us to ask him to fix the stormwater throughout that neighborhood.
Mr. Chair, it's an older neighborhood, obviously no curb and gutter, built, probably 60s, 70s. And, of course, any new project has to conform to both the county and state requirements. So we will not be pushing our water off to our neighbors as part of this project. I'd just like to also state, we had a community meeting, thought it was fairly positive. Of course, there's a few people who did not want, new development in that area, and Mr. Milstead being one of them. And we understand you've been there a while, don't like a lot of change. But the reality is the comprehensive plan is for that area is change. It is infill change. It is greater density. It is increased commercial. That's going to continue to be a pattern. Not that we want to displace folks. That's the last thing we want to do. But new investment and founding housing in locations where some older developments are going to be sort of part of what happens into the future. And that's the plan. We're not trying to hide the project, for sure. We think it's a very high-quality project. We think the county be proud of it. We think that folks who want to work and live in Spotsylvania County will be able to do so at this site. And we appreciate the fact that we can be in this neighborhood, in this location. And again, we think that it'd be very low impact. We think from a traffic perspective, clearly the analysis shows very few trips coming from this site, not only overall, but also during AM and peak hours. And again, being so close to that intersection of Route 1, most of those trips are going to be to Route 1, which has a full light intersection. So With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, comments from the board? Ms. Marshall?
It was brought up about the Hudgens Road, the former location of it being a driveway. Is that right away that I'm assuming was there at some point in time? Is that
I'm not
required?
familiar. Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of those allegations. I just know that, you know, where we're accessing is right away, VDOT right away, and you know, we obviously would have to abide by those requirements for that purpose.
Okay.
But I'm not aware of the allegations that were made.
I'm looking at the plat we have here, that's attached. Section 2, I see looks to be like a 7.8 foot. I'm assuming it's a right of way. It's very small for me to look at. Coming behind, it says 3 block 12. Is that going to be that portion of where the road was? Where Hudgens Road was, or was supposed to be at one time?
I'm sorry, Mr. Marshall, where are you looking?
Patrick, can you pull the plan back up on the site view?
It may not be what it is. I'm trying to zoom in on it myself. 7.8 feet.
I'm Mark King with Bowman Consulting Group. I'm the civil engineer on this. When this development was platted back in, like Charlie said, 50s, 60s or so, they set it up in just a grid pattern, and that's why you get all these different blocks and sections and lot numbers as a part of it. And as this developed, the owner had purchased all the property. It wasn't necessarily right-of-way. They were just setting it up in a, like you would see in a city, you know, just a grid pattern of homes and potential access points. And as this developed over the years, it would be the same with the other homeowners. It, you know, it morphed into where Hudgens is at and where Mosby's is at this point. And the property that's there that was showing some type of ingress egress is all a part of the property that the developer owns.
So he's purchased the right of way that was there.
That's
Okay.
all a part of. It's all a part of the 1.01, you know, acres. So
who previously owned the right of way? Do you know?
I would have to guess it. I don't believe it was right away, but usually it goes to the county. And then as a road develops, the county will eventually, and gets built, they turn it over to VDOT.
Okay, so that would be the 7.8 that I'm looking at.
Yes,
Would be that
would
that portion.
eventually would have been something that if it was going to be right away and not an alleyway, and they may have envisioned these, you know, back 50, 60 years ago is, you know, where I grew up, it was the same way. You had little alleyways between the back of houses where people had garages and all, but it wasn't developed that way. You know, Hudgens ended up being where it's at, and Mosby's and all the various roadways over there that tie into Route 1 and Lafayette Boulevard. But they do own the property. It's not something that's out there that's a floating right of way that somebody else owns.
Yeah, I don't recall any of the title work.
Nothing's on the title?
I'd love to get a load.
I just, like I said, I seen it on the plat, and it's hard to see on one day.
Any other questions, concerns from the board? Well, Mr. Yakubowski.
No, I was going to make a motion to approve if there was nothing else from the board.
Sir, I can't let you speak. We've closed the public hearing, sorry. All right, you want to wait for Mr. McLaughlin to allow him a few minutes or a minute before I vote on it? I'll give him just a minute.
We'll give it a minute, that's fine.
How about those Capitals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I might, I will just make a couple of comments then.
Okay, go ahead.
And fill some dead air. I'm more than happy to support this project. I did go to the public hearing, and the overwhelming majority of people there, I do believe you were there at that one. It's been a couple of years. We're very supportive of it. There are a couple of other lots that are in there that have had new houses built, and I do believe those are at least two-story, if not three, that are along Hudgens on the right-hand side there. Several years back, yes, the Radley Chevrolet did put in for a rezoning, and I do believe that that project turned out quite nice with a brick wall and down lighting and a treed buffer. So I'm more than happy to support this as that area does grow and change and redevelop. So my motion is to approve.
Good. Got a motion to approve the Roslyn project. Mr. Yakubowski.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
No.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
Chair's nay.
And just to clarify, Mr. Yakubowski, that was for approval with the proffers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we gonna?
That brings us, Mr. Chairman, to the added presentation, short presentation concerning a visit we had last week from Korea. Seong, Korea is a planned administrative city with an anticipated population of 500,000. And officials from Seong and from South Korea came to visit to see examples of low-impact development in Spotsylvania County and elsewhere in Northern Virginia. I'll pass around some materials that they shared with us. So this is a new planned town that the first town portion of it opened in 2011. The groundbreaking was in 2007. And their government complex opened in December of 2012. At build out, they anticipate a population of 500,000.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Members of the board, I'm Troy Tigner, Director of Zoning and Environmental Codes. And with me is Richard Street, our Senior Environmental Engineer. It was quite an honor to have 10 environmental scientists come to visit. Their first stop in the U.S. was right here in Spotsylvania County, Virginia. They could have stopped anywhere in the United States or anywhere in Virginia, but they stopped right here in Spotsylvania County. And the reason they stopped here in Spotsylvania County was because of communications and outreach that Richard had an opportunity through the Virginia Tech University to communicate with one of their doctoral candidates, and she took back Richard's presentations on low-impact development. Richard's been doing low-impact development presentations in Virginia for about 20-some years, and out of that relationship, Richard was invited to visit South Korea and look at low-impact development in their country. So with that, I'm going kind of that little intro. I just want to introduce Richard and let him tell you a little bit about the story and how that came to be. And we'll go to our first slide.
Okay. Basically, Virginia Tech has a program called the Land Development Design Initiative. And every 2 years, they offer specialized training for their civil engineers to have municipal engineering. Well, Spotsylvania has been one of the leads in their municipal engineering courses. We've actually been a mentor for them for about 8 years now. And we go down there every 2 years and we help them out. We give them a project that we have a question on, and they tend to turn around and give us really good answers. And basically, one of the students had to do her doctorate thesis, and one of it was to interview someone in a municipality that has developed some form of low-impact development, and they came to us. And they interviewed me, and with that, the whole discussion began. And last year, in July, I was asked to make a presentation at the International Low-Impact Development Seminar, and it was only myself and a gentleman from China who was actually one of the British consulates who was doing low-impact development in China. And we were the only two presenters to a room filled with almost 700 professors, government officials, and design officials, and even the doggone Minister of the Environment was there. So we went ahead and we did our presentations, and between the two presentations, they called us. And they said they wanted to come see what we had. So we brought them here, and we opened the invitation. They wanted to see something from Spotsylvania, which they had seen several of our presentations. And they also wanted to see the Low Impact Development Center in Maryland, which doesn't even come close to what they have as far as low impact development in their Low Impact Development Center. They also wanted to see urban development in DC and how they've accomplished low impact development there and retrofitting. And then they wanted to check out Fairfax and see how Fairfax has handled it. On our sites, I know we first brought them here and explained to them the location in Spotsylvania and the history of Spotsylvania. And the one thing they liked was we're almost at the same parallel. Our weather's almost the same, our soils are almost the same, except they can't identify the native plants that we identify with. So we started to explain it to them, and we had a great introduction. Go to the next one. Yeah, there you go. Mr. Taylor and Delegate Cole and Mr. Tigner and myself, we welcomed them to the county. Then we went into a brief presentation, and we explained to them the history of low-impact development, not just in Virginia, but in Spotsylvania, and how well we've done with it. We showed them several sites. We took them, not only did we explain to them how they were designed, we took them to the sites, like our public site, which has an underground storm drainage system that looks like the catacombs.
And Richard's idea of a brief presentation is 9:30 to 11:30 PowerPoint, and these folks were very attentive throughout the entire 2-hour period. They sat basically like you see them sitting in this photograph.
Which is why tonight's this is a nano presentation.
This is, yeah. Well, but the key was there's two factors we didn't count on: so many questions, and the interpretation, because we had to stop and let them interpret what I was saying. And the presentation was meant to be 15 minutes. That didn't work. But we did take them to a couple sites, and they were totally amazed with this location here is the Steak and Shake site. The Steak and Shake was put in with porous pavement. And they kept saying, oh, porous pavement doesn't work, porous pavement doesn't work. Well, we pointed out to them that we didn't trust porous pavement when Steak and Shake came in. So we had them put in a stormwater management basin below it. The week before they came, we had over 7.5 inches of rain for the whole week. Well, then the few days before they showed up, we had another 4 inches dumped on us. Went out there, and that basin should have been wet. Should have had standing water in it. It was bone dry. All the water is soaking back into the ground. That's low impact development. Then we took them, we ended it at Mount Zion Baptist Church, which I don't know if any of you remember, several years ago there was a grant that DEQ had, and they used it for Mount Zion because Mount Zion just couldn't add on and have to buy 3 houses to put in a stormwater management basin. So they went underground with it, and they used grass pave. And we sat there and showed them for the entire, I think it was an 8-acre site of what should have been impervious surface, actually had a discharge pipe that was only 6 inches in diameter because all the water was soaking back into the ground. So we've done exactly what low impact development was supposed to do, and we pointed out that those 2 sites were put in before the current stormwater regulations. They have no stormwater runoff, they have no scour downstream, and the newer sites that we have to follow the stormwater regulations, we have scour issues again.
And we just wanted to check out how Fairfax County stacked up to Spotsylvania County. So we tagged along yesterday on their view of Fairfax County and their stormwater management. And the only thing I could see that Fairfax does that we do not do was a green roof scenario. Every other LID is implemented on the site plans in Spotsylvania County, just like Fairfax County. They're just off the scale and different scope than Spotsylvania County with number of projects, but just about everything they had, we have, except for a green roof environment.
And the one point that Troy made in our long journey back with the traffic was that up there in Fairfax, we found out they have a staff of 165 people for stormwater only. We have a staff of 1, but we're doing the same.
And they have 2,000 facilities that they maintain as a county, and it was pretty impressive. We went to a school. The first stop was at a school, and they had a stormwater outreach program where the students in elementary school were actually planting a rain garden, and the Korean delegation got down there on their knees and planted water-loving plants along with the school students in that environment there. And so we were happy to be there and see their presentation also.
And the only one saving grace or one item that did come out of this that really surprised both Troy and I was that they left the door open. They want to talk to us more to help them out, and they want to help us out. They've already given us insight in some of their woes with solar panels being built on the steep slopes.
And if we ever grow up to be a Fairfax, they have 186,000 students in their school system that are under the age of 18. 186,000. That's their number.
Let me tell you, they're nice.
Thank you so much. That concludes our presentation.
Tried to keep it short for you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
I have a very brief report, Mr. Chairman, before we get to closed sessions. Closed session, I did want to provide an answer to Mr. McLaughlin's question raised at the May 22nd, 2018 board meeting. He phrased the question as, has Spotsylvania County done all that it can do in the Buckley situation? And more particularly, I feel constrained to restate the question in light of our Department of Social Services mission under Virginia law, as has Spotsylvania County DSS done everything that it can do in serving the best interests of the child that we identify as JB. As the local Social Services Board, I've given this question that Mr. McLaughlin posed fresh consideration. For the record, I've asked myself this question multiple times since I first heard about the Buckley family's concerns with the Department of Social Services. I've discussed their case numerous times with the department director, and I've discussed it multiple times with the department's legal counsel. I believe that reviewing our actions and questioning our decisions are valuable practices that help us ensure the quality of services that Spotsylvania County provides in all of our departments, and social services very much included. In considering the question afresh, I've reviewed some of the Virginia Department of Social Services online training concerning the identification and recognition of child abuse and neglect. I've met again with Director Crooks, and I've also discussed with her Mr. McLaughlin's question and the other various concerns raised by multiple speakers at recent public presentations. I've also reviewed Virginia statutes pertaining to the confidentiality of records and information regarding child welfare cases, and I've discussed those confidentiality parameters with Mr. Bob Beard, our social services legal counsel. With the number of public concerns that have been made concerning the Buckley family and their desire to recover custody of JB, I understand that the confidentiality requirements in Virginia's laws that are applicable to all cases of this sort are very frustrating to the community's interest in knowing that our department is functioning properly and responsibly. But I can't change the confidentiality requirements, nor can I violate them. I'm concerned that the one-sided public commentary on the subject matter may over time tend to undermine undermine both the community's trust in the Department of Social Services and our juvenile and domestic relations court. I'm also concerned that over time the dynamic may have a chilling effect on our service to the community, and particularly our engagement of foster families and even staff. With all of this in mind, I want to reiterate that our paramount concern of the department is to dutifully serve the best interest of the child in accordance with Virginia law and applicable state regulations and policies and federal guidelines. The short answer to Mr. McLaughlin's question is that we, Spotsylvania County, are doing our very best in the situation. Legally, due to the confidentiality constraints, there is no public accounting available at this time for the department's efforts to serve JB or the Buckley family. Records in child welfare cases are confidential. Based on the advice of our legal counsel, even the scheduling of hearing dates and other procedural information is subject to that confidentiality constraint. This is the law of the case. It's not a unique constraint in this case, and this is not treatment for which the Buckleys have been singled out. This is the way all such cases work. Customarily, action or intervention by the Department of Social Services is prompted by a notification alerting the department of concern for the welfare of a child. Persons in the community with particular roles in the lives of children, including teachers and pediatric health professionals, are designated as mandatory reporters who are required by law to notify social services of situations showing signs that a child may be subject to abuse or neglect. Social services does not ordinarily act absent notification from a third party. And I highlight this practice because several recent public statements have seemed to suggest a belief that social services initiates action on its own initiative, and that is simply not the case. Medical professionals, both civilian and military, are mandatory reporters. Many of the public statements have mentioned that the Buckley family consulted medical professionals at the University of Virginia and at Walter Reed Medical Center. The Buckleys themselves have spoken here about their hesitancy and their desire to wait and contemplate the treatment plan recommended for JB in relation to the Social Services Department's intervention. Public comments we've heard suggest that Social Services action was fundamental and perhaps critical to activating medical treatment for JB. We can't know what the criticality or urgency of JB's treatment was at the time it was administered. We do know from multiple public comments that the child is now doing well. So while multiple public comments have complained of the duration of the process in JB's case to date, very little has been said about the causes of the continuances or delays in the process. So long as necessary witnesses are available, it would be customary and expected that the department would move any child welfare case along as quickly as possible, consistent with the best interests of the child, because stabilization of placement, whether it's returning the child home or otherwise, is a fundamental interest of virtually every child. I believe that DSS has done everything possible in this case to avoid delay and to be responsible to any scheduling requests made by the Buckleys. Spotsylvania County Department of Social Services continues to evaluate conditions of the Buckley's case, and the department is responsive to the case's current conditions with due consideration of its history, court decisions, and court directions, and all relevant policies. The department continues to do its best to pursue the most appropriate next steps to ensure the health and safety of the child. We are doing all that we can do, gentlemen, and to the best of our ability. And thank you.
All right, this is your resolution to adjourn into closed meeting. Whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn into closed meeting for a discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the county, specifically the position of Director of Human Resources. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn into closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, specifically regarding utilities matters, a criminal matter, and a matter of local taxation, and whereas Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A1 and 8, such discussions may occur in closed meeting, now therefore be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors does hereby authorize discussion of the aforestated matters.
So moved.
Mr. Yakubowski.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
Chair's aye.
Vote, and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2, 3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now therefore be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors hereby returns to open meeting and certifies by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Mr. Yakubowski.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
Chair's aye.
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, it is required to move a regular meeting date that you adopt the resolution. We've drafted that resolution. Amy has a copy of that. This resolution moves the meeting originally set for June 26, 2018 at 6 p.m. to June 28, 2018 at 6 p.m. Same place.
Okay. Do we need to?
So moved.
I got a motion first by Mr. Skinner.
Second.
To approve the change in dates. Amy, you got that. Mr.
Aye.
Yakubowski? Ms. McLaughlin? Mr. Skinner?
Aye.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
Chair's aye.
motion.
I'll give a motion to
Motion
get out
to
of here.
adjourn.
Yes. Motion adjourned by Mr.
Aye.
Skinner. All ayes? Any nays?